Chapter 1370. Silence reigned. Everyone seemed to have been dumbfounded. They stared at the empty space in a daze. There was still a pool of blood and flesh on the ground, but there was nothing in the air. It was as if the two lords had evaporated into thin air. There was not even the slightest fluctuation of their souls. Everyone could see it. Ji Lingxi and Shangguan Lingxiu's graceful silhouettes did not stop as they continued to stride forward. Every step they took was like a lotus, swaying gracefully. There was an indescribable elegance to them, an indescribable charm to them. Wherever they passed, a fragrant wind lingered while the blood on the ground evaporated in advance, following the direction of their footsteps. As soon as this change occurred, everyone in the hall was astounded, and all of them were dumbstruck and tongue-tied. Countless Lord Saints could not help shuddering the moment their gazes fell on the pool of blood on the ground. The more they thought about it, the more terrified they were. Ji Lingxi was about to step into the residence of the Ninth Supremacy's box when she suddenly turned around and looked at Huan Wenyuan. She said faintly, "Huan Wenyuan, you, the Northern Wasteland Demonic Palace's Sun Saint, don't live up to your name. You're just spouting empty words. Why didn't you do it yourself just now? If you did it yourself, wouldn't it be perfectly justifiable? Knowledge and action are one." Beside her, Shangguan Lingxiu was also looking at Huan Wenyuan with murderous intent in her eyes. Huan Wenyuan's face was pale, his eyes blank. How could he not understand the true meaning of her words? If he had done it himself just now, he would be the one who would be destroyed in both body and soul. He would have become an illusion. The Holy Sun's status was revered and his cultivation was high, but when it came to true cultivation, it wasn't much higher than the people around him. Just that power and the backlash just now, Huan Wenyuan knew that he couldn't resist it no matter what. Even if he cultivated for another 100 years, he would not be able to withstand it. These two women were actually so terrifying. He gritted his teeth and did not speak. He panted heavily, but his heart was filled with rage. Could the two of you protect Yunyang just because you two women are powerful? Once Yunyang dies, the two of you will only be women, two beautiful widows who have yet to marry. As he thought about it, his heart was ablaze. If Yunyang dies, and he doesn't die in my hands, I can avenge Yunyang. Perhaps, the 6 or 7 experts who had leaped up to clean up the two women's masks, only to have their masks snatched away by others, fell back down unwillingly. Their faces were deathly pale, and their bodies were trembling uncontrollably. Fortunately, I stopped myself. Otherwise, right now, Yunyang did not move, but he was grumbling inwardly, *T, do all of you really think that I'm a coward by not doing anything? I can't even remove the veils on these two girls. I thought that I could try kissing them now that my cultivation base has improved, but it's still the same as before. No, I could still touch Lingxiu in the past, but it looks like I can't even touch Lingxiu now. What kind of F***king life is this? Shangguan Lingxiu said faintly, "We've never thought of stirring up trouble when we came here this time. Our only thought is to welcome our husband back. We can't even be bothered with the grudges here. I didn't expect that the heroes of the world would gather here to unveil these two little girls. This is really unexpected. We sisters will wait here. I wonder if anyone else wants us to remove our veils. Why don't you try again?" Ji Lingxi smirked and said, "Like I said, empty words are useless. If you're a man, put it into action. Stand up and let us sisters see what a man is like." Although the two women were wearing white veils, their lithe figures were already captivating. They stood at the door of the room, exuding an aura of elegance. In spite of this, none of the experts dared say a word, let alone step forward. At this moment, everyone's hearts were trembling. Just now, what exactly happened? They did not see the two women make a move. How did those 2 second-grade Saint Monarchs turn into ashes and die? Could it be that the protective chi that was beyond imagination had killed the two lords the moment they came into contact? Isn't this a little too terrifying? The hall was silent for a long, long time. Everyone was still staring at Ji Lingxi and Shangguan Lingxiu in shock. The reason for the crowd's loss of composure was very simple. They had all come to the same conclusion: their power and capabilities were incredible. Could these two women actually be saint-level experts? However, why would such a strong master have his eyes on Yunyang? Why would they be willing to share a husband with two women? What right did they have? Rumor had it that Supreme Cloud, Yunyang, had an outstanding appearance before he was sealed into a fox's head. He was a top-notch gigolo. Perhaps it was because of this that he had been favored by these two powerful women? In fact, Yunyang's smooth-sailing journey was mostly due to these two men's influence, relying on their strength. After witnessing the two women's astounding capabilities, the crowd's imagination began to run wild. Many people's gazes towards Yunyang changed at once. Gigolo. You freaking live off a woman to this extent. You're really the only one in history who's ever done it. What they did not know was that Ji Lingxi and Shangguan Lingxiu were sighing helplessly inwardly despite their arrogance. Although the two ladies' real cultivation base had improved a lot since they parted ways with Yunyang, they were already at the level of third-level Supreme Saint. This improvement was not insignificant, it was absolutely commendable. However, with their current level, they did not have the right to interfere in today's situation. They were still relying on the powerful protective chi reflection that they had been blessed with. With such a powerful protection, even if a saint came to attack, it would be futile, let alone a saint lord. If Yunyang wanted to kiss them, not only would he have to continue working hard, he would probably have to work hard for a very, very long time. However, when it came to the two women taking the initiative to defeat the enemy, they would not be able to do anything even if any of the lords present were to stand still and allow them to use all their trump cards. However, the effect of the commotion had already been created. The chi reflection effect of the protective chi reflection was too frightening and too deeply ingrained in everyone's hearts. There was no need to do anything else, it had already subdued all the experts present, without exception. The higher a cultivator's cultivation base was, the lower their judgment of themselves. For example, ascending to the level of saint was already a formidable expert in the eyes of ordinary cultivators. However, there were still saint kings, saint emperors, saint venerables, and above saint lords, half-step saints, and saints. Above these, there were even stronger existences. As for the higher existences that surpassed this world's knowledge and were comparable to a certain monarch who could split the world into two with a single sword, there were a few who were protective by nature. In other words, they were extremely protective. Ji Lingxi's father, for example, was at least in the top 5 in this aspect. As for Shangguan Lingxiu's grandmaster, who was also Aunt Mei's husband, he ranked even higher, being one of the top 3. If the disciples and children of these two had come out to gain experience, perhaps they would have let them go if they were boys. But especially when it was two girls, it was already going against their hearts that these two fellows didn't directly follow them. This made them a little worried. Based on this mentality, it was only natural for them to be given protective treasures and the like. The only fear was that it was not enough or strong enough. After a while, Dongfang Xingchen of the East Celestial Palace had a strange gleam in his eyes as he ordered in a low voice, "Clean this up. Today is a joyous day for us to welcome Supreme Cloud's safe return. Don't let the stench of blood dilute the atmosphere." Before his words echoed in the air, a group of Golden Knight Tower's attendants had already rushed over to clean up. The remains of the Castellan, who had been the most authoritative figure in tonight's city before today, were swept away like trash, yet no one spoke up for him. This was the martial world. You chose the wrong side and stood on the wrong side, yet the person you relied on did not stand up for you. Then, you could just die, a worthless death that you deserved. The bigger the fist, the bigger the reason. If my fist is big enough, I can be reasonable even if I'm unreasonable. At the entrance of the Golden Knight Tower, a youth was clenching his fists tightly. His eyes were bloodshot as he stared at the Castellan's corpse. His gaze was filled with resentment as he bit the edge of his lips so hard that blood dripped down. However, even though the young man's entire body was trembling, he did not make the slightest sound. He only stared fixedly at one of the few people in the north direction. After staring fixedly for a long time, he finally turned around and left. Revenge. He had seen his father discussing with the Son of God with his own eyes. The reason his father had stood up was because of the Son of God's coercion. However, when it came to the critical moment, not only did this Son of God not lend a helping hand as he had promised, he had even pretended to be a good person, turning a deaf ear to the fact that his father had been killed. When it came to revenge, he did not hate Yun Yang. Yun Yang was the main culprit who had killed his father, but there was a reason for him to do so. His father had provoked him first and the matter was urgent. If Yun Yang had held back, he would only be looked down upon and leave behind a hidden threat. He was being too soft-hearted. If he were in Yun Yang's shoes, he would probably be even more ruthless than Yun Yang. However, he could not help but hate the person who had egged his father on, who had made countless empty promises but had done nothing in the end. I must avenge this in this lifetime. The youth brought his followers and took his father's corpse away, vanishing without a trace. Yun Yang sat down boldly, as steady as a mountain. The Golden Knight restaurant's wine and dishes were served like flowing water. Killing the city lord to establish his authority, coupled with the two ladies' terrifying abilities, had long suppressed many of his petty thoughts. At this moment, the Golden Knight restaurant was filled with the aroma of wine and dishes. The unpleasantness, conflict, and the stench of blood seemed to have vanished without a trace. Just as the banquet began, Dongfang Xingchen, who was dressed in a robe whiter than snow, stood up slowly, his face full of smiles as he said, "Lord Supreme Cloud, please don't be offended. Millions of people have millions of thoughts, and the unhappiness just now was only the opinions of a few. Now that the small conflict has passed, please allow me to represent the world's heroes to propose a toast to Lord Supreme Cloud." Although there was still a snort mixed in, everyone present still raised their goblets in unison, a toast to Lord Supreme Cloud. Bang! Before they could finish their words, the window above them suddenly exploded, and a black-clothed masked man walked in like a demonic god. He sneered, "Didn't you say that it's a toast to me? I haven't even arrived yet, so what are you all drinking for? I wonder who you all are drinking for? Presumptuous. Who is it?" Immediately, a few people shouted angrily. Everyone present looked over in unison, only to see that the person who had just arrived had an extremely powerful aura. As he descended from the sky, he revealed the majestic aura of a king who had just arrived, and his power was unparalleled. "Who are you?" Dongfang Xingchen bellowed angrily, "Which madman dares to cause trouble in this banquet? Do you know what kind of place this is? Such arrogance, do you want to make the entire bound of universe your enemy?" The masked man in black guffawed, "Madman? This noble one has stirred up unpredictable winds and clouds in the demon realm, stirring up endless bloodshed. For the bound of universe, I can be said to have given my all for the sake of the bound of universe's human race. How can you be so arrogant just because I want to know what's going on? Where are the leaders of the 3 heavenly palaces? This noble one would like to ask one thing. Previously, when you announced that you would confer me the title of Bound of Universe Supreme Cloud, does that still count? What a joke, what a joke." As soon as the newcomer's words came out, everyone present fell into a strange atmosphere of shock. This noble one came to tonight's city to borrow the Blood Soul Mountain to return to the demon realm. I was supposed to pass through the city, but I heard that Lord Supreme Cloud was hosting a banquet here. Out of curiosity, I was tempted. The black-clothed man chuckled coldly. "At first, I thought that my whereabouts were not kept a secret and was discovered by someone who set up a banquet here. I was tempted by the fact that the bound of universe's human race still remembered this noble one's efforts. But now that I'm here, I realize that the one you all invited is someone else. But, who exactly is it? Is it really the bound of universe Supreme Cloud?" He laughed and said, "If he's the bound of universe Supreme Cloud, then who am I?" Supreme Cloud. This person actually called himself the bound of universe Supreme Cloud. If the person who came was the bound of universe Supreme Cloud, then who was the person sitting at the head of the hall? The entire hall was shocked. Shi Wuchen could not help but curse, shameless fellow. Who do you think you are to pretend to be my boss? The man waved his hand casually and hollered, how dare an ant pretend to be a member of the residence of 9 Supremes? Die. A beam of white light struck like a bolt of lightning, full of murderous intent. Sher Wuchen bellowed and drew his sword to meet the attack. With a loud bang, Sher Wuchen felt a surge of tremendous force. Even with his successive breakthroughs and great improvement in his cultivation base, he was still not strong enough. At the same time, Sher Wuchen felt a sinister force transmitted from the long sword to his fingers, wrists, arms, all the way to the vital point of his heart. The person's sudden attack was obviously to kill Sher Wuchen in one fell swoop to establish his authority. Furthermore, his intention was not only to deny Yun Yang's identity as Supreme Cloud, but also to deny the entire residence of 9 Supremes as well. His intention to kill was obvious. Sher Wuchen was also someone who had been through a lot. It was one thing for him to be lacking in strength, but it was not to the extent that he could only resign himself to death. He took a deep breath and was about to explode his chi reserves to fight for his life when he felt a hand on his back. Immediately, the sinister force was repelled by a warm force, dissipating into nothingness. Not only that, but the momentum of his retreat, which had been forced by the opponent's overwhelming strength to the point of losing his footing, also came to a stop. It was Yun Yang. Ji Lingxi and Shangguan Lingxiu were enraged and were about to stand up and attack. The person was now pretending to be Yun Yang, which meant that he was pretending to be their man. To the two ladies, it was a great humiliation. Yun Yang's voice rang in their ears. Don't be impatient. There must be someone behind this. It won't help if you act rashly. You might even alarm the enemy. Don't move first. I want to lure them and see how many people are against me. The two ladies snorted, rolled their eyes, and sat down. Dongfang Xingchen's shocked voice could be heard saying, "Who are you? Supreme Cloud?" Suddenly, a loud laugh rang out. What a joke! Lord Supreme Cloud is already sitting here. As he spoke, he pointed at Yun Yang. Under the gaze of countless Saint Lords and Saint Venerables, the man in black was still at ease. He threw his head back and guffawed. What a joke! What a joke! To be acknowledged by the world, especially by the higher-ups, you're quite capable. But don't you think this is too ironic? He turned around abruptly and glared at Yun Yang like a sharp blade. Brat, how dare you impersonate me, impersonate the hero of the Bound of Universe? Does it feel good? Before Yun Yang could answer, there was another burst of laughter. With a swoosh, another man in black broke in from the window on the right and said with a guffaw, I don't know if he feels good or not, but I would like to ask you, does it feel good when you pretend to be me so well? The man in black descended from the sky, his face masked as he stood proudly in the center of the hall. As he looked around, his gaze was as sharp as lightning. He sneered and said, the banquet where the world's heroes welcome Supreme Cloud is actually welcoming an imposter. How laughable and pathetic. While we're welcoming the imposter, another imposter has come to make a scene. This reputed one doesn't know whether to laugh or cry. Who are you? This reputed one is the Bound of Universe Supreme Cloud. The newcomer had a tall stature and wore a large mask on his head. His facial features could not be seen clearly. However, these few words were like the sound of metal clashing. Everyone heard them clearly. At this moment, the hall was plunged into an unprecedented uproar. Not only had there been another Supreme Cloud, but now there was a third Supreme Cloud? What kind of statement was this? Was this a free gift for a Supreme Cloud gathering? The person who came first and the one who came later were similar in stature and height. Just by looking at their physiques, they were almost like twins. They stood facing each other and looked at each other before turning to look at Yun Yang, who had already sat down. Their chuckles were filled with mockery. I thought it was a vile person, but I didn't expect so many people to impersonate me. The person who came first sneered. Is the identity of the Bound of Universe Supreme Cloud so good? If it's not good and not attractive enough, why would you pretend to be in front of others? The person who came later sneered. Rascal, take off your mask. Do you want this reputed one to do it myself? The person who came first snorted and pointed at Yun Yang, hollering, Junior. Come down quickly. I'd like to see what you're capable of impersonating this reputed one. Yun Yang's gaze grew colder and colder. The murderous intent in his heart overflowed and was difficult to suppress. The cultivation base of these two people in front of him was at the level of a Saint Lord. Moreover, they were both third-grade Saint Lords. As he casually stood there, the lofty aura he emitted and the might he exuded as he spoke with confidence and composure had long since revealed the level of his cultivation. The attack that the first person had aimed at Shi Wuchen further proved this point. However, the higher the cultivation base of the person who came, the angrier Yun Yang was. These people could only be Saint Lords from the three heavenly palaces, the pinnacle of the world. But now, all of them had appeared here and were trying their best to frame him. Most of the people who came to attend the banquet were also from the three heavenly palaces. Among them, at least half of them had the intention of killing him. He recalled how he had risked his life to fight against the demon race. Almost every moment, every step he took, he was struggling between life and death. He had finally come back and thought that he had made some contributions to the human race. However, what he faced were all kinds of tricks and plots from his own people. Almost everyone wanted to kill him. At this moment, Yun Yang's state of mind suddenly became unusually cold. His heart was as cold as steel like never before. The main cause of the demon race's internal strife and civil war was the demon emperor's unjust and unruly conduct. At least from Yun Yang's point of view, there was a reason for it and it was excusable. However, the internal strife of humans was all for the sake of power and profit. It was absolutely unforgivable. Even the demon race knows how to distinguish between kindness and hatred, but these humans who have received my great favor, the experts who stand at the pinnacle of human cultivators, are showing such a despicable side. The fire in Yun Yang's heart soared to the sky, becoming more and more difficult to suppress. However, in the face of their criticism, Yun Yang smiled faintly and said, "Why are you in such a hurry? I think there will be more supreme clouds coming later. I'm really interested to see how many supreme clouds will show up today." A deafening roar came from afar. Then, with a rumble, a hole was smashed right above the hall. Amidst the swirling smoke and dust, a tall figure drifted down. "You're right. I'd like to see how many supreme clouds are going to impersonate me today." Another supreme cloud had come. At this point, including Yun Yang, there were 4 supreme clouds gathered in the hall. Most of the people present were dumbfounded and stunned on the spot. Many could not help but stare at Yun Yang, who was still sitting, suspicion flashing in their eyes. Was the first one to arrive the real supreme cloud? Yun Xiaoxin's face was flushed with anger. Finally, she could not help standing up and scolding loudly, "All of you are obviously people of great status, and your cultivation base is so high. Why do you have to shamelessly pretend to be my master and frame him? You, how can you be so shameless?" The masked man, who was the last to arrive, sighed and said, "Xiaoxin, this matter is extremely complicated. When I solve it, you will naturally understand it, and the whole world will also know the truth and understand the cause and effect." He actually pretended to be Supreme Cloud to the end. Yun Xiaoxin spat and said angrily, "Bah! Whose master are you? You shameless thing! You don't deserve to be my master." The 3 people in the hall laughed at the same time and said in unison, "Well said. You are indeed my good disciple." At this moment, a stuttering voice rang out, You, who is Supreme Cloud?" The crowd turned to look in the direction of the voice. Yin Yang frowned and turned his head abruptly. The person who spoke was the Great Elder of the Sacred Heart Palace, Lei Qianli. Great Elder Lei's face was filled with confusion as he asked, How could there be 4 of them all of a sudden? Who is the real one?" He looked perplexed, as if he was really dumbfounded. Meanwhile, Dongfang Xingchen, who was sitting in the north seat, also wore a puzzled expression as he murmured, "This is really strange. Beigong Wushuang snorted and rolled his eyes, not wanting to speak anymore. Shiman Huanyu said faintly, "Who is Supreme Cloud?" "Isn't it easy to tell? We only need to fight, and the one who survives will definitely be Lord Supreme Cloud. If Supreme Cloud isn't strong enough, how can he turn the entire demon race upside down?" A voice laughed and said, "Saint Child Shiman, you are absolutely right. Since you are pretending to be me, how can you not pay a little price?" As the voice rang out, another masked man in black jumped in. 5 of them. Including Yun Yang, there were already 5 people who claimed to be Supreme Cloud. A long howl came from afar, followed by another eerie voice, *T, who dares to pretend to be this Supreme Cloud? A silhouette flashed, and the crowd only saw a blur before another masked man in black appeared. The newcomer's gaze was like lightning as he scanned the crowd and bellowed, "This seat is the real Supreme Cloud. Where did you find so many imposters? Aren't you afraid of being laughed at by the world? Are the people of the 3 heavenly palaces blind?" 6. The crowd felt that things were getting more and more complicated, and their heads were getting dizzier. A cold laugh rang out as someone said, "So you know that there is such a thing as being laughed at by the world? Then why are you still pretending to be me? The people of the 3 heavenly palaces are blind, and yet you all are acting the same way. Otherwise, why would I be wary of you all?" Another black-clothed masked man appeared. 7. Then, a steady voice spoke, "Everyone, the name of Supreme Cloud may be respected, but it is still just an identity. I really don't understand why everyone is so passionate about it. Could it be that my name is so popular?" Another person walked in from the main entrance. Judging from the newcomer's tone, it was another person who claimed to be Supreme Cloud. That would be 8 Supreme Clouds. In the hall, countless Saint Monarchs and Saint Venerables were completely dumbfounded and tongue-tied. Oh my God! Why were there 8 Supreme Clouds appearing one after another? This was completely subverting their worldview and ruining their imagination. However, the subversion was not over yet. As the silhouettes flashed again, 2 more masked men in black appeared in the hall. Both of them guffawed at the same time. "Ha ha ha, I'm so happy. I didn't expect my identity to be so popular. That would be 10. A total of 10 Supreme Clouds, but who would their names belong to now that they were gathered here?" Someone sighed softly and said faintly, "Sigh, I had no intention of appearing here. Fame and fortune have never been my wish. It's fine if it's just 1 or 2 of you impersonating me, but now there are so many of you impersonating me. What if any of you do something evil? Won't I have to bear the consequences? This impersonator is right. Reputation is like a fleeting cloud to me, but now it seems that this matter has to be dealt with. Reputation is fleeting, but karma is not." As soon as he finished speaking, 2 more people entered the arena. This time, even the Divine Prince's expressions became interesting. Holy *T. 12 Supreme Clouds. Waha! So many people impersonating me, how can I not join in the fun? Another Supreme Cloud entered the hall. Nothing is too strange in this world. There are so many impersonating me. Do you think you can impersonate me just by putting on a mask? What a joke, the biggest joke in the world. Here came another one. 14 Supreme Clouds. The crowd's eyeballs were about to fall out of their sockets. He felt a wave of dizziness wash over him. What in the world was going on? There's only one bound of Universe Supreme Cloud. Even if he could impersonate many Supreme Clouds, there can only be one real person. The rest are all fake. But which one is the real one? Lei Qianli was even more perplexed. What is going on? He looked incredulous and fearful. That was close. I'm here to receive Supreme Cloud under the Temple Lord's orders. If I were to receive a fake one, wouldn't I be shamed for 10,000 years? That was close. Lei Qianli's words were tantamount to saying that the Yun Yang they had received earlier was a fake. Everyone understood what he meant. Even those from the Sacred Heart Palace thought that this Yun Yang was a fake. Yun Yang had entered the demon realm under the request of the Sacred Heart Palace's temple lord. What else was there to say? Dongfang Xingchen furrowed his brows and said, "This matter is truly confusing and thought-provoking. Elder Lei, don't be impatient. We'll get to the bottom of this. We won't let you go back with a fake, Huan Wenyuan glanced at Yun Yang, who was still sitting upright, and laughed sinisterly. Elder Lei is right. Of these 14 supreme clouds, at least 13 are fakes. Lanting raised his wine cup calmly. Even so, I still only believe Supreme Cloud who is already seated. The rest are not worth mentioning. And Sinew laughed heartily. Not worth mentioning. Today, 14 people are fighting for one identity, and each of them is a pinnacle expert in this world. This is unprecedented. I'm really interested to see who will prove themselves in the end. Jia Shixiang, the holy son of the Western Heaven's sacred palace, said sinisterly, How? How can the real and the fake be counted? Feng Padian frowned. This scene is a farce. This isn't a banquet for Supreme Cloud, but a prank on us. Everyone's expressions were interesting. After all, they were not masked, and everyone could see their emotions clearly. There were even more people who were waiting to watch a good show. Only the people of the residence of 9 Supremes and the 9th Supremes were almost bursting with anger. Yin Yang was still sitting calmly in his seat, but he was sneering inwardly. Anyone with a brain could see that this was a conspiracy. A conspiracy against the bound of Universe Supreme Cloud. The so-called gathering here to find out who the Supreme Cloud belonged to was even more of a farce. There was no need to distinguish who Supreme Cloud was. Everyone present knew very well who he was. However, other than the people of the residence of 9 Supremes and the 9th Supremes, everyone else pretended to be muddle-headed and acted like they were muddle-headed, stirring up the situation and making it bloom. There was no other reason than that more than 80% of the people in this Golden Knight Tower wanted him dead. There was no doubt about that. Even the remaining people were happy to see his death and were willing to lend him a hand. However, it was this point that filled Yun Yang with an inexplicable feeling. Was he disappointed? Not really. At least, not entirely. It was a kind of disappointment, a feeling that made Yun Yang feel worse than being disappointed. Disappointment. A complete and utter disappointment. This was the behavior of human experts, the actions of the peak experts. For their own interests, for power, for status, even if their target was a hero who had made great contributions to humanity, they could still be abandoned and defeated. Yin Yang had always known that there were too many people like this. However, Yin Yang, who was used to being treated like a hero when he was in the Tianxian continent, had never experienced this personally. Now that he had truly experienced this feeling, it made Yun Yang extremely unhappy. It was no big deal that they wanted to kill him for their own goals. It was understandable, and Yun Yang could even accept it. However, what Yun Yang could not figure out was that everyone was targeting him now. Could it be that in this world, the 3 heavenly palaces and some rogue saint lords, there was no one who did not want him dead? Tonight's banquet in the city was clearly a gathering of conspiracies. Everyone could only watch helplessly as they fought alone to their deaths. If his endless divine art had not broken through to the 7th stage, he would have died here, no matter how capable he was. Now, it seemed that even Elder Lei Qianli of the Sacred Heart Palace, who was supposed to be on the same side as him, had ulterior motives as well. He had done all sorts of things to facilitate this situation. Yin Yang squinted and observed everyone around him, be it close or far. He realized that there were people who were worried for him, although there were not all of them, but they were very few. Compared to the enormous forces that wanted him dead and those that were happy to see him dead, they were insignificant. If they were to go against each other, these people would not even dare to help him. In other words, he could only rely on the forces on his side now. However, compared to him, the residents of 9 Supremes, Shi Wuchen and the others, and even the residents of 9th Supremes, Ji Lingxi and the others, were not necessarily in danger. As long as he was dead, whether the residence of 9 Supremes and the residence of 9th Supremes still existed or not would not matter. He believed that the people who were in charge of this incident from the 3 heavenly palaces would treat the people from the 2 residences with more courtesy in order to gain a good reputation. Therefore, all the spearheads were now directed at him. Below him, the 13 masked men dressed in black were all tall and steady like mountains, their auras dignified. Each of them was an expert among experts. Other than the brief introduction at the beginning, they did not argue anymore. They stood silently, their gazes sweeping back and forth. However, these people's gazes were mostly on Yunyang. It was obvious that these people would never kill each other. These 13 people had only one goal in mind. Yunyang. Ha 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 ha, Dongfang Xingchen suddenly let out a hearty laugh and said, "Everyone, today's matter is really strange. 14 Lord Supreme Clouds have appeared all of a sudden. Even I, the Holy Sun, am a little confused now. Who is this gathering for, and who should we greet?" Shimen Huanyu said faintly, "You're not the only one who is confused. However, I firmly believe that heroes will not be buried, and warriors should not be wronged. The real Supreme Cloud will definitely appear, and among these 14 people, the one who remains and emerges victorious will only be the Real Lord Supreme Cloud." Lu Mingxing said, "Emerge victorious? Did Lord Supreme Cloud defeat the rest of the impostors all on his own?" Lei Qinli, the great elder of the Sacred Heart Palace, said with a frown, "May I ask, Sons of Holy Sun, what should we do today?" This old man is already confused and at a loss for what to do. "Please come up with a plan, Sons of Holy Sun." Lai Kuangfeng said angrily, "What are you all talking about? What do you mean by confused and at a loss for what to do? Why don't you know who Supreme Cloud is? Who has the right to speak about who belongs to Lord Supreme Cloud? Who is the residence of 9 Supremes acknowledged? The 2 leaders of the residence of 9th Supremes have also provided evidence. Isn't that enough? Why are you all pretending to be confused? Disgusting." Yu Zhenxiao said faintly, "Kuangfeng, don't talk nonsense. Now is not the time for you to cause trouble for the Eastern Celestial Palace." Lai Kuangfeng narrowed his eyes and said, "You say I'm talking nonsense, but it's obviously you all who are pretending to be confused. It's you who have made the hero bleed and shed tears. It's all your dirty deeds." Yu Zhenxiao said, "It's precisely to prevent the hero from crying and shedding tears that we have to figure out who Supreme Cloud is. It's not up to you to acknowledge who is who. This requires evidence. How can one person's words be enough?" Lai Kuangfeng was furious and said, "Could it be that these fellows were not the same person's words? How is this not clear?" Nantian Yun, the chosen of the Northern Wilderness Demon Palace, sneered. "Lai Kuangfeng, you don't have the final say on who Supreme Cloud is. Only with everyone's approval can it be counted." Feng Patian, the chosen of the Western Heaven Holy Palace, said, "If so, how can we prove that we can get everyone's approval?" Huan Wenyuan laughed strangely. "According to the rules of the martial world, the strong are revered. This is the simplest and most direct method. I believe that no one will question the final winner." Beigong Wushuang said faintly, "Could it be that the strong can say they are who they are? Randomly find a Saint Monarch expert to kill your Huan Wenyuan and then say that he is Huan Wenyuan. Is he really Huan Wenyuan?" Huan Wenyuan's expression changed as he said angrily, "Wushuang, what do you mean by that?" "Nothing." Beigong Wushuang laughed coldly. "I just think it's funny, that's all." Dongfang Xingchen interrupted, "This matter has developed to this point, and it is indeed difficult to handle. None of the 14 Supreme Clouds gathered here are ordinary people, but none of them are willing to remove their masks. With a mask on, we really can't tell them apart. It's hard to come to a conclusion." He spread his hands and said with a bitter smile, "Actually, even if we take off our masks, we might not be able to tell who is who." What he said made it impossible to prove that they were the ones who took off their masks. Today is Xiao Rui's birthday. I wish Feng Xiao Rui a happy birthday. She's getting prettier and prettier. Find a good husband soon, ha ha ha. Chapter 1371. Holy Sun Dongfang's words have struck a chord in my heart. Based on the capabilities of these people before us, a mere transformation technique is not worth mentioning. Jia Shixiang sighed and said, even if we want to lend a hand, we have to be cautious. What if we accidentally hurt the Real Lord Supreme Cloud? Wouldn't we be condemned for eternity? Feng Patian turned to Yun Yang and said, I wonder if Lord Supreme Cloud, who arrived first, has any brilliant ideas? Yun Yang smiled mockingly and said, I have an idea. What is it? The crowd asked in unison. Yin Yang said with a grin, just like what Holy Child Wen Yuan said, the martial world's rule is that the strong are respected. Let the 14 Supreme Clouds here fight it out, and the one who survives will be the Real Lord Supreme Cloud. Even if the one who survives is fake, as long as he survives, it doesn't matter whether he's real or not, does it? Don't you think this is a bad idea? Yin Yang's words were filled with sarcasm, and he did not even bother to hide it. However, many people immediately applauded, this is a good idea. The strong are respected, of course, the winner is real. Although this is a little extreme, it's still a good idea. Dongfang Xingchen clapped his hands and said, the martial world's rule is that the strong are the king, and the winner is respected. Shimen Huanyu frowned and said, it's not right, not right. How is it not right? If it's a chaotic fight, and those with ulterior motives gather their forces to kill the Real Lord Supreme Cloud, or what if the Real Lord Supreme Cloud wins by instinct but is killed by others? This method is not fair. Oh. Holy Child Huanyu has a point. I wonder how we can be fair. A one-on-one fight is fine. It can avoid ganging up on one person to the greatest extent. Everyone can choose their opponents freely. The situation is chaotic now, and although we don't know what's going on, we can maintain order here and ensure that there's no conspiracy against us. Everyone chimed in one after another, pushing the matter in the direction of a one-on-one fight. Everyone had their own opinions, one said it, another supported it, and there was an explanation. With so many people talking at the same time, they had already made it clear that this matter was a done deal and that it was imperative to carry it out. Yes, a one-on-one fight. Lord Supreme Cloud had single-handedly swept through the demons, so naturally, he was the strongest. In a one-on-one fight, Lord Supreme Cloud will definitely emerge victorious. That's right. Let Lord Supreme Cloud teach these imposters a good lesson. We'll be in charge of cheering for Lord Supreme Cloud here. Just like that, they pushed the matter to an irreversible conclusion. Yin Yang listened with a smile. He knew that these people must have more to say because the current situation was not enough to turn the situation into a dead end. Since they had created such a situation, they definitely had other tricks up their sleeves that would cause them to become the target of everyone. If they were to really fight one-on-one, many of the 13 people would definitely fight amongst themselves and lose their combat strength. How could they be happy to see that? This is indeed a good idea. Among the 13 black-clothed masked men, one of them said with a smile, since you have the guts to impersonate me, you will naturally have to bear my wrath. Whether it's a one-on-one fight or a group fight, this reputed one will take it all. As the saying goes, true gold fears no fire. I, Supreme Cloud, have been invincible in the demon race. Many demon kings have been toyed with by me, I've annihilated millions of demons. Do you think I'll be afraid of a few clowns like you? Another masked man in black guffawed as well. It looks like no one is willing to admit that they're fake. Imposters? If so, let's see who's the real deal. Then, another masked man in black said eerily, this reputed one agrees with this idea as well. Those who have the guts to impersonate me will naturally have to pay with their lives. If there's anyone who's afraid, quit now, lest you lose your life in a moment of recklessness and your lifetime's worth of cultivation return to the flowing water. Another person said faintly, it's never easy to live a peaceful life to an old age in this world. How many lives have passed through the trials of the martial world, but if you're courting death, it's all too easy. Drawing one's saber to form one's blade will make everything go down the drain. Everyone, it's not easy to impersonate me. I advise you to quit quickly. You can still preserve your lives for 100 years. This reputed one's anger can no longer be contained. How dare you impersonate me and profane the name of the Bound of Universe's hero? When the battle starts later, this reputed one will not be merciful. These supreme clouds stood there one after another, each of them about the same height and weight. They spoke one after another, using the tone of Supreme Cloud's identity. For a moment, the scene was extremely chaotic. If that's the case, this matter is decided. Dongfang Xingchen made the final decision. Everyone, those who have different opinions can still back out now. After this, life and death will be determined by fate, wealth and honor will be determined by the heavens. How could these so-called Lord Supreme Clouds back out after he said so? If anyone were to back out now, wouldn't it mean that they were impersonators? This was absolutely unacceptable. The venue of the duel shall be in this hall. Dongfang Xingchen said faintly, "Let me remind everyone one last time. Many of the servants and maids here are ordinary people. Everyone knows the rules of the Bound of Universe's practitioners. If you can't control your strength and hurt ordinary people, you'll be killed by God's punishment." Yin Yang turned to look at the Son of Glory of the East Celestial Palace. This was Dongfang Haoran's son. He sighed inwardly. Dongfang Haoran has racked his brains for the sake of humanity, but do you know that your son is the biggest mastermind behind all of this? If I kill your son, how would you feel? If your son were to plot to kill me, what would you do as the ruler of the East Celestial Palace? Anyone with a bit of sense could see that Dongfang Xingchen and the other Sons of Glory were guiding this farce in a direction that was becoming more and more disadvantageous to Yun Yang. Ji Lingxi and Shangguan Lingxiu were so angry that their stomachs almost burst. Watching so many people targeting Yun Yang with their eyes wide open, the two ladies only wanted to go down and beat all of them to death. However, they really couldn't beat them, and they were also afraid that it would affect Yun Yang's set plan. They had always known that Yun Yang would plan before taking action, but they were still so angry that they almost crushed their teeth from gritting them. We've been searching for him for so many years, and now that we've finally found him, we have to watch him being bullied by all of you. This is so infuriating. Our improvement is still too slow, and our abilities are still insufficient. Ji Lingxi gritted her teeth, her eyes glinting with a cold glint. Shangguan Lingxiu snorted and said, "What goes around comes around, and heaven forgives no one. When our abilities have improved and we can handle the situation, we'll go to the 3 celestial palaces at once. We won't stop until we've smashed them to smithereens. What Bound of Gold Holy Land, the place of prosperity for the human race. Pfft! What good can our master be if he only has these trashy airs? It's a promise. No matter what Yun Yang says or does, we sisters are definitely going to the 3 celestial palaces." Ji Lingxi felt like her chest was about to explode from the rage. She said through gritted teeth, "No matter what the outcome is today, the 3 celestial palaces are guilty of not teaching their disciples properly. They must give us an explanation for this. I'll go into closed-door cultivation when we get back." Shangguan Lingxiu's gaze was sharp as she scanned the faces of the 12 chosen saints and said angrily, "Master has always said that I came out too early, that I can't go anywhere without sufficient ability, but I missed the both of you, so I came out. If I'd come back after breaking through to the level of Saint Lord. 3 celestial palaces, wait for me to come knocking on your door." Shangguan Lingxiu had always been quiet and introverted. It was rare for her to lose her temper like this. It was Yun Yang's first time encountering such a direct display of anger. He could not help but feel warmth in his heart, gradually easing the chill in his heart. He looked at Ji Lingxi and Shangguan Lingxiu from afar and transmitted his voice to them. "Don't worry. My intention is to kill here and find the cancerous tumors of the 3 celestial palaces. I'll see if I can eliminate a few of them. What's happening now is just me pushing the boat along with the current. As long as the final result is satisfactory, some indignation in the process is inevitable. The two ladies' expressions softened slightly, but they were still seething with anger and hatred. Yin Yang suddenly recalled what Dongfang Haoran had said to him before they parted. Kill when you have to. Don't show any mercy. No matter what your identity is. Thinking of this, he could not help sighing inwardly. Dongfang Haoran, when you said this to me, were you already mentally prepared for today's situation? Have you made up your mind? Or perhaps, you already know something? Otherwise, why did you add the phrase, no matter what your identity is? Don't tell me you're really prepared to sacrifice your own son. Yin Yang's thoughts raced. The moment he thought of this, he could not help feeling the anger and indignation in him recede like the tide. Dongfang Haoran's words back then, based on his experience, had initially thought that he was implying that the East Celestial Palace's people were up to no good. Now, it seemed that his judgment was wrong. There should be another meaning to it. Now that he was facing tens of thousands of enemies alone, the situation was extremely dangerous. Being alone and without help was already a dire situation. However, what he was going through now was not even 1,000th of what Dongfang Haoran was going through. What he had to face was his son's greed. What he had to face was the news of his beloved son's death. Furthermore, if Dongfang Xingchen really died in his hands, Dongfang Haoran would not even be able to seek revenge. He would not even be in a position to seek revenge. Yin Yang raised his head and stared at Dongfang Xingchen, who was sitting at the front seat in the north. His white robes were like snow and his sharp brows were like swords, his calm demeanor as if everything was within his control, his confident demeanor. Phew, Yin Yang heaved a long sigh. Child, don't you dare face me head on. Otherwise, your Uncle Yun will definitely not be lenient. Yin Yang had abruptly elevated his status to the same level as Dongfang Haoran. Perhaps this was the only reason he could give Dongfang Xingchen the last chance of survival. The theory of cause and effect was based on the theory of predecessors sowing karma and descendants reaping karma. To Yin Yang, with Dongfang Haoran's antecedent, Yin Yang knew that he could not kill his son without a care no matter what. This was probably a consequence. At this moment, Yin Yang's understanding of the Tao of cause and effect deepened. Of course, if this child insists on seeking his own death, I can only kill him in the name of justice. Everyone, pardon my ignorance, I really don't know how to address all of you. I can't possibly call all of you Lord Supreme Cloud, can I? Ha ha ha, don't you think so? Dongfang Xingchen's opening remark was actually a joke before he got to the main topic, causing a burst of laughter. Is it that funny? Ji Lingxi pouted. Her voice was very loud, and everyone present heard it. Their laughter was stifled. Based on the prowess that she and Shangguan Lingxiu had displayed earlier, no one had the guts to provoke them. They had looked down on everyone and intimidated them. The so-called pinnacle cultivators of this world are merely followers of the rich and powerful. The so-called despicable and shameless authors do not only exist in the secular world. Shangguan Lingxiu said loudly, I've only found out today that the Bound of Universe's high-level martial artists are all like this. Ji Lingxi feigned curiosity and asked, could it be that after cultivating their entire lives and reaching the pinnacle of this world's cultivators, their greatest achievement is to be able to flatter others without a care for their pride? Shangguan Lingxiu snorted and said, Sister Lingxi, there's something you don't know. The higher the level of a martial artist, the longer they live, and the more afraid they are of death. Another advantage of being old is that they have far more life experience than ordinary people. Who should be flattered, who shouldn't be flattered, and when to flatter, these old farts know better than anyone else. She chuckled mockingly and said, why else would these people live so long? It's because they've been hiding for too long. Sister, do you know that there's a saying in Tianxian continent that goes around among the people? 1,000-year tortoise, 10,000-year tortoise. Do you know what it means? Please enlighten me, sister, Ji Lingxi asked curiously. Shangguan Lingxiu smiled faintly and said, that's because tortoises spend their entire lives in the mud and rarely come out. That's why they can live so long. Otherwise, why would the saying, hiding in a tortoise, be an idiom? What does hiding in a tortoise mean? Understand it literally. Don't you get it? If tortoises and tortoises could stand up for themselves, where would there be so many legends about them? They would have all died a long time ago, and the idiom, hiding in a tortoise, wouldn't exist then. Ji Lingxi said excitedly, Sister, you're absolutely right. No wonder. Listening to your words is better than studying for 10 years. Right, sister, did you say that all the so-called lords and venerables in this hall, the pinnacle cultivators of this world, are all tortoises and tortoises? She purposely uttered the words in an innocent tone, causing everyone's expression to change. This was no longer simply pointing at monks and calling them bald donkeys. She was clearly saying that everyone here was a tortoise and tortoise. In spite of all the experts present, no one dared to express their anger. The scene of the two ladies killing two saint lords with their protective chi was still fresh in their minds. Who dared to act rashly? Perhaps, as Shangguan Lingxiu had said, the greatest reliance of ace cultivators was not their cultivation base, but their ability to adapt to the situation and assess the situation. They would hide in a tortoise when it was time to do so, just like how they would choose to go against Yun Yang, the hero of the bound of universe. Just like how they did not react to the insults being hurled at them. Most of the people were still wondering when these two unfathomable female experts would go berserk. What was more frightening was whether they would go berserk or not. They did not speak, but it did not mean that the others would not speak as well. After all, not everyone knew the extent of these two ladies' power and deterrence. A masked Supreme Cloud who stood in the middle of the hall suddenly sneered and said in shock, Where did these two little girls come from? How dare you speak so rudely in front of the world's heroes? How can the elders in your families be at ease to let you roam the martial world? Ji Lingxi's tone was filled with mockery as she asked in return, Don't you know me? Why should I know you? The person was taken aback. Ji Lingxi laughed. I'm Supreme Cloud's fiancé. How dare you say that you don't know me? Who are you then? The impostor was taken aback. He had arrived late, so he did not know what had happened earlier. With a frown, he said, Of course I know you, my fiancé. It's just that you're wearing a mask and your mannerisms are different. Even your voice and intonation are different. Take off your mask and let me have a look. Ji Lingxi squinted her eyes and said, I'm wearing the mask. Wouldn't it be embarrassing for me to take it off myself? If you're really Supreme Cloud, I'll give you a chance to take it off. How about that? The person felt that this little girl's cultivation base was only third-level Supreme Saint. How could she dare to provoke him like this? With a wave of his hand, he hollered, Then let me help you take it off. I want to tell you with reality that not just anyone can pretend to be my fiancé. Before his words echoed in the air, a strong gust of wind blew past. This gust of wind was mixed with a dark force. Other than taking off his mask, he also intended to knock Ji Lingxi out with a slap. If he used too much force and killed her, then so be it. It did not matter. Once I leave after this, so what if I have a powerful backer? I'm pretending to be Supreme Cloud today. Who knows who I really am? However, as soon as he made his move, he was shocked to realize that everyone around him had a change in expression. He was just wondering why the people's expressions had changed. Were they feeling righteous indignation? Then, he heard a clap of thunder in the air, followed by a loud crack. A ray of white light appeared out of nowhere and struck his head in the nick of time. Although this white light, or rather, this bolt of lightning, was extremely fast, it did not create a huge commotion. At the very least, most of the experts present were confident that they could unleash a move that was 10 or even 100 times stronger than this white light. However, this seemingly unremarkable white light caused green smoke to rise from the body of the third-grade Saint Monarch, who was an impostor. A dense smell of barbecued meat spread throughout the entire place. His body swayed a few times, and then he fell to the ground as if a golden mountain or jade pillar had been toppled over. It was obvious that he was no longer alive. Following that, a head was separated from the body and rolled away, but the force of the white light was still entwining around it. The moment the physical body was destroyed, the spiritual energy of the third-level Holy Lord took form immediately and tried to escape. However, the white light abruptly turned into a white net of light, easily trapping the spiritual body. "Save me." The third-level Holy Lord's spiritual body only managed to utter the last two words of his life before he turned into a puff of green smoke, vanishing completely under the white light. The other 12 impostors took a step back in unison, their eyes filled with fear. When they looked at Ji Lingxi again, they were inexplicably shocked. Who was this woman? How could she kill a holy lord with just her shield of vigor? Not only that, her body and soul had been destroyed, but she had also died in such a way that even the spiritual body could not escape. This was terrifying, was it not? Looking at the dead person, and Sinu's face twitched. She said with a dark expression, "It seems like this person is no more than an impostor. Death cannot wipe out his crimes. Someone, clean up this person's remains. Grind his bones and scatter his ashes as a warning to others." Dongfang Xingchen squinted his eyes and suddenly laughed, saying, "This impostor is truly laughable. Lady Ji Lingxi and Lady Shangguan Lingxiu are Lord Supreme Cloud's fiancés. How dare he impersonate Lord Supreme Cloud when he doesn't even know Lord Supreme Cloud's fiancés? That's great, we've saved ourselves the trouble of screening them." The remaining 12 people understood at once. This woman who claimed to be Supreme Cloud's fiancé was the real deal. Dongfang Xingchen's words were meant to remind Yunyang not to dwell on this matter any longer. It would not end well for him. Yunyang lifted his head slightly and looked at Holy Son Dongfang, a murderous glint flashing across his eyes. "Dongfang Haoran, I really want to show mercy to your son. However, if he insists on courting death and is walking further and further down the path of courting death, I can't do anything about it either." Ji Lingxi said faintly, "Actually, there are many ways to identify who Supreme Cloud is. They're all simple and easy. I really don't understand why all of you would go through so much trouble and go through so much trouble. May I ask what's the good way, lady?" The group asked in unison. No one dared to ignore or disregard Ji Lingxi's words anymore. 2 Saint Lords had fallen in her hands. What a deterrent that was. Ji Lingxi's body suddenly glowed as the image of the residence of 9 Supreme Celestial Luck Banner appeared. She then said, "Yin Yang is the bound of universe's Supreme Cloud, but he's also the residence of 9 Supreme. As the founder of the residence of 9 Supremes, can't he activate the Celestial Luck Banner of the residence of 9 Supremes? It's just like how I activate the Celestial Luck Banner of the residence of 9 Supremes. If he can activate it, it's real. If he can't, it's fake. What else is there to be unclear about?" Just as the words left her lips, Dongfang Xingchen's handsome face changed immediately. This was a good way to tell the truth at once, but the problem now was not to prove who was the real Yunyang. If they really used this method, it would be counterproductive. However, no one was in the position to criticize this method. If they did not give a good explanation, would they not be afraid that Ji Lingxi would kill them? One of the masked men in the field rolled his eyes and then said with a bitter smile, "This is not entirely correct. I've been framed by the demonic race's mystic art. They had gathered the strength of hundreds of demon kings to cast the heaven sealing formation on me that day. My spiritual energy can no longer communicate with heaven and earth, and because of this, my appearance has been sealed." He heaved a long sigh and said, "The direct result of being unable to communicate with the spiritual chi of heaven and earth is being unable to communicate with heaven and earth. The so-called method of activating the image of the Celestial Luck Banner is not suitable for now. If someone can really move and activate the residence of 9 Supreme Celestial Luck Banner, that person must have done it intentionally. There's no doubt that it's fake, and there's a great conspiracy hidden within." "That's right. How can the Celestial Luck Banner be activated if you can't communicate with heaven and earth?" Another masked man sighed and said, "Lingxi, the Celestial Luck Banner can't prove it." Now that he knew Ji Lingxi's name, he actually called her Lingxi, in a grand manner. Upon hearing the call, the murderous intent that had just subsided in Yun Yang's eyes intensified once more. Ji Lingxi's eyes were filled with murderous intent as well. She said faintly, "Try calling my name again if you dare." The man shrunk his neck and said, "I won't." Ji Lingxi gritted her teeth in anger, but there was nothing she could do. Her cultivation base was not as good as the man's. She could not do anything to the man on her own, and she would only expose herself. Once her true ability was discovered to be limited to defense and counterattack, the consequences would be dire. Moreover, she believed that no one present would dare attack her again. It would be suicide. Shangguan Lingxiu wanted to say that Yun Yang had entered the Tao for less than 30 years, and that he could be identified by checking his bone age. However, she did not believe that there was anyone else in this world who could reach the level of a Saint Lord in less than 100 years of cultivation. Unexpectedly, Yun Yang stood up first and said in a low voice, "What's the point of saying more? All the supreme clouds here are ready to fight to the death. Wasting words is just a waste of time. The fastest way to identify Supreme Cloud is but a word. Who dares swear to heaven that they're not an impostor?" The 12 people below chortled in unison. "Ha ha ha. I, Yin Yang, am a man of indomitable spirit. If you want to eliminate the impostor, let's see who's the real deal. There's no need to resort to such a roundabout method." Yin Yang chuckled mockingly. "I don't think you lot have the guts to seek your own death. I'm not really going to force you to swear either. After all, that's just asking you to commit suicide. Since you've already decided to fight, let's decide. How do we fight? Who's going against whom?" Yin Yang chuckled and said, "I'm guessing that all of you will choose me as your opponent." The first imposter took a step forward and said eerily, "I don't care about the others. At least in my eyes, you're the most thick-skinned. You, the imposter, have impersonated Supreme Cloud's position and sat down openly. This is already shameless and a heinous crime. How can I let it go so easily? Come down and fight with me. I'd like to see what capabilities you have to dare impersonate me." Yin Yang smiled faintly and said, "Challenge me? Sure, but before we fight, I have a condition that must be made clear." "What condition?" "Duel to determine who's right and who's wrong. After the victor and the loser, the winner will enjoy everything. However, among all the supreme clouds here, only one is real, and the final winner will be the real one. Then, please swear to heaven that if you lose, you'll have to reveal your true identity and the whereabouts of your family." Yin Yang said coldly, "Holy Sun Dongfang has made it clear that Supreme Cloud won't be defeated. Only Supreme Cloud will be left in the end. There must be at least 12 imposters. Everyone, please swear. If you lose, you'll have to reveal your true identity and the whereabouts of your family." Yin Yang's words were incredibly chilling, filled with the intent to die. It was clear that the loser would die, but that was not all. They would have to be uprooted and their families annihilated. Since you have the guts to do such a thing today, you should be prepared to have your families annihilated. Just as the crowd was about to speak, Yin Yang had already cut them off. "Don't all of you call yourselves Supreme Cloud? Don't tell me that you don't even have the guts to bear this responsibility? Heaven's oath is fair and impartial, to be fair and impartial. Your ultimate goal is nothing more than to kill me. Now, I understand your goal. I'll give you this chance. If you don't swear, I won't give you the chance to fight." Yin Yang said mockingly, "The sky is clear above your head. A single word can invoke heaven's will. If you're not willing to swear, I'll swear to heavens will directly to prove that I'm Yin Yang. If the heavens don't kill me, of course all of you are fake. I'm giving you a chance. I'm following your wishes because I want to kill all of you as well, and your families. This is the price all of you must pay. I've decided that I won't let all of you leave in peace. I'll annihilate all of you. Therefore, I'm giving all of you one last chance to fight. Make your own choice." These words were tantamount to ripping apart everything. There was no need to act anymore. How could Yin Yang not have thought of the method that Shangguan Lingxiu had thought of? There was also the simpler and more convenient method of swearing to heaven. However, Yin Yang's killing intent was unprecedented. He had to vent his anger by killing the supreme clouds in front of him. Otherwise, he would not be able to quell his rage. Do you not want to fight? Do you not want to kill me? I'm giving you a chance. Let's see if you dare to take this chance. No, it's no longer a question of whether you want it or not. Try your best to kill me. Otherwise, it'll be all of you who die. If you lose, your families will be annihilated. If I lose, that's my fate. There's no way out for you. If you retreat now, you'll be surrounded by the Bound of Universe's experts. Believe me, they'll definitely attack you. If I break my promise, I'll have no descendants. If I lose, I'll still annihilate your entire family, but I'll leave a bloodline for all of you. At this moment, the 12 men in black were no longer as calm as before. Their gazes hardened. Yin Yang's coercion had left them with no way out. It was no longer a question of whether to do it or not. They had to do it. Only by winning would there be a possibility of a follow-up. If they lost, their entire family's lives would be in someone else's hands. Dongfang Xingchen guffawed and said, "That's a great way to put it. 12 imposters wouldn't dare to swear. Even if they have more people, I think it's useless. Ha ha ha, it looks like the truth is right in front of us." Hearing Dongfang Xingchen's words, the 12 men's eyes flashed. Dongfang Xingchen's words had reminded them. Yes, we might not know each other, but there are at least 12 imposters. Even if you, Yin Yang, can kill one or two of them, can you really kill all of us? Even if we take turns, we can still kill you. You actually want to use such a method to block our path of retreat and wear down our fighting spirit. What you don't know is that you're forcing yourself into a dead end by doing this. If you had sworn the heavens oath directly, we would be in a dilemma and our lives would be uncertain. However, you're courting death by taking such an extreme path. Ji Lingxi hurriedly sent a telepathic message to Yun Yang. What are you trying to do? Why aren't you using such a good idea? Why must you fight with those people? This. Are you really that confident? Yin Yang replied, "Don't worry, everything is under control. This is just a minor issue, nothing to worry about." While Yin Yang comforted Ji Lingxi verbally, he was actually cursing in his heart. Yin Yang had been through many formidable enemies for a long time, so he always acted after making a decision. He had never sought a fluke instead of taking a risk. The method just now was his plan to break out of this predicament. In Yin Yang's mind, as long as this method was executed, it would be equivalent to forcing the 12 men into a dead end. Dongfang Xingchen and the others present would be helpless and would even have to assist Yun Yang in besieging these 12 people. This way, the 12 men would never die willingly. At least, not all of them would die willingly. They could easily find out who the mastermind was. As the saying went, a man's words were kind when he was about to die. Once a thief bites into the bone, the mastermind would not be able to do anything for the time being, regardless of whether the mastermind was real or not. Thus, this situation would be broken without a hitch. What Yin Yang lacked now was time. As long as he had a certain amount of time and a certain opportunity to elevate his cultivation base to a higher level, he would no longer have to resort to trickery. However, Yin Yang had unexpectedly received Dongfang Haoran's telepathic message just now. Agree to fight them and force them and the mastermind out. This old man wants to exterminate their families one by one. Yin Yang was helpless. If King want to exterminate their families, just do it. Why must I be the vanguard? Can't I achieve a similar goal if I follow my plan? But if I follow your plan, forget about the risk and just say that your son is definitely the mastermind. How are you going to exterminate his entire family? Kill him first and then commit suicide? The shame of the celestial palace can't be exposed in our own hands. Dongfang Haoran's voice was filled with sorrow and helplessness. This is also Shiman Fafu and Beigong Liuli's problem. Dongfang Haoran chuckled bitterly. This is our common problem. We know that there's a problem with our air, but we can't bring ourselves to get rid of it. We can only rely on external forces. What we can do is to clean up the mess after everything has passed. And your appearance has accelerated this process. You've given them too much of a sense of crisis. It's also accelerated our determination. Yin Yang said, "Why don't I know that a person who can become the lord of the celestial palace doesn't even have this much determination?" Dongfang Haoran's smile was bitter. "You've never been a father, nor have you been a master for too long. If you had brought up one or a few children from a young age and taught them with care, you'd understand this heartache. Ordinary people are willing to give up everything for their children after a dozen or 20 years of father-son relationship, but what if they nurture a child for thousands of years? You don't understand how deep the relationship is. They've long become a part of our lives. Even if they know that the sores on their bodies are life-threatening, who can cut off their own flesh that has accompanied them for countless years?" Dongfang Haoran chuckled coldly. "So you've silently allowed this to happen? Why is there still such a lame one?" Yin Yang asked. Dongfang Haoran was silent for a moment before he answered, "Yes." Yin Yang sucked in a deep breath and said, "What I want to know now is this. How many people do you want to die?" After Dongfang Haoran's voice came, there was no more news. "I only hope that those who deserve to die don't live any longer. I don't want such a lame farce to happen a second time." With Dongfang Xingqian's reminder, the 12 impostors, including Yun Yang, swore a heaven's oath. "If I lose, I'll reveal my true identity and the whereabouts of my family. Heaven's will." At the same time, the other 11 people retreated into a large room in unison. Only Yun Yang and the 12th impostor were left. "Although you've impersonated me, I still admire your courage," the person said faintly. Yin Yang replied, "Although you've impersonated me well, with a dignified air, I still look down on you. You, who've reached the pinnacle of this world's experts, have been reduced to a chess piece. You even have to rely on someone else's pity for the safety of your own family." Yin Yang's laughter was unusually arrogant. "Unlike you, this reputed one is a chess player. I can destroy chess pieces with a flick of my finger, be it outside or inside the chessboard." Without waiting for the impostor's reply, he drew his saber with a clang and hollered, "Come." With a long howl, the impostor pulled out his saber. As the saber glinted, an oddly shaped blade appeared in his hand. It had to be said that the impostor was well prepared to imitate Yun Yang. Even the shape and size of the saber in his hand were exactly the same as Yun Yang's divine edge. At least, that was how it looked. Yin Yang's gaze grew colder as the tip of his saber lowered. At this moment, an endless amount of mystical qi surged from his dantian like a rising tide. Ever since Yun Yang's endless divine art had broken through to the 7th stage, his cultivation base had been improving by leaps and bounds during this period of time. Even though the heaven's sealing seal was still in place and he could not communicate with the spiritual qi of heaven and earth, the endless spiritual qi in his deific consciousness space made up for it, constantly washing through Yun Yang's meridians. It was the purest innate spiritual qi. It was ridiculous to say that it could not make up for it. It should be said that it was the most extravagant and mystical cultivation state. Today, the spiritual qi in Yun Yang's meridians had completely turned into a golden liquid state. At this moment, he could still clearly feel the endless spiritual qi pouring down and surging. The first level of Saint King was already yesterday's flower, even the bottleneck of the second level pinnacle of Saint King had long been crossed. Just the accumulation of spiritual qi alone had already allowed Yun Yang to surpass the third level of Saint King. After half a year of diligent closed-door cultivation, Yun Yang's cultivation base had undergone an earth-shattering change. Yin Yang had always been invincible among his peers. This was not publicly acknowledged, but it was a fact. Today's battle would once again prove that this saying was true. He gripped the blade of divine will in his hand and injected his boundless profound qi into the blade. The blade of divine will suddenly flickered with brilliant light and circled around the blade. Seeing that the battle had begun, the impostor was full of confidence. Since Yun Yang's reappearance, the only battle that he had revealed to the world was when he defeated the 3 Shui brothers. As for the 3 Shui brothers, they were only first-level Saint Kings. Even if it was rumored that when the 3 brothers joined forces, their tacit cooperation could rival a third-level Saint King, it was just an exaggeration. Their actual combat power was definitely not as strong as they were. At least, this impostor who was facing Yun Yang now believed that he could defeat the 3 Shui brothers with ease. At that time, Yun Yang would still need to scheme and plan ahead. When Yun Yang first came to the East Celestial Palace, his cultivation base was only 4th-level Saint Venerable. Up until now, it had only been half a year. Half a year's time, at most, was enough for him to break through the bottleneck once and advance to the first level of Saint King. At most, the impostor of first level should be the limit, right? On this basis, in order to play it safe, he would try to overestimate him and give him another level. However, he was only a 2nd-level Saint Venerable. As a 3rd-level Saint King, at least in his heart, he had absolute confidence that he would win. Otherwise, how could he be willing to be Yun Yang's first opponent? He might have the thought of snatching the credit and ending this battle as soon as possible. He stood tall and looked at Yun Yang indifferently, as if he was looking at a corpse. His right hand held the hilt of his saber and slowly moved it. The saber light flowed, making a buzzing sound. The saber was in his hand, but there was no scabbard. Then, he slowly raised the saber. The saber seemed to be unsheathed from its scabbard, letting out a sound like a dragon's roar that shook the sky. The next moment, the saber light suddenly moved in the sky, like a bright bolt of lightning appearing in the void. It was eye-catching and captivating. The shining saber light made everyone's eyes feel a stinging pain. The magnificent saber light slashed towards Yun Yang's head. There was nothing ingenious about this move. The only thing that was commendable about it was that it was extremely fast. A 3rd-grade Saint Monarch had gathered all the profound energy in his body into a single blade. The extreme speed that could be unleashed was truly shocking. He wanted to kill Yun Yang with this slash and end this farce once and for all. On the opposite side, Yun Yang's saber shone with a gentle light. It was neither fast nor slow, but it met the opponent's saber before it reached his head. Right in front of Yun Yang's eyes, above his forehead, the 2 sabers collided violently. Then, the dazzling white light became even more dazzling. At that moment, it was as if there was suddenly an additional sun in the hall. It was so bright that no one could see it clearly. However, everyone heard a muffled grunt and a clang. The clang should be the sound of the saber falling to the ground, and the grunt was. Chapter 1372. Everyone hurriedly used their eyesight to look. On the battlefield, the 2 of them stood facing each other with a distance of 30 meters between them. On the ground was a broken saber. There was only half of it left in the hands of the masked man in black. His eyes looked at Yun Yang quietly, a sliver of despair slowly seeping into his gaze. A line of blood slowly appeared on his forehead. The line of blood was very thin. But it spread from his forehead all the way down to the bridge of his nose, his lips, his philtrum, his lower jaw. His chest and back were all slowly showing signs of blood. "I've lost," the masked man in black said with a sigh. Yun Yang's gaze was hard and cold. "I've lost the bet. You still have time. With your cultivation base, you can still control your body. Within a quarter of an hour, you won't be split in 2. I'll give you some time to explain what you lost." He smiled cruelly, "That is, if you don't want to die without descendants." Yun Yang rolled his eyes and chuckled. He was not as angry as he thought to himself. "You people have really put in a lot of effort just to impersonate me. You've thought it through thoroughly, even gathering this much. How thoughtful of you. If you're willing to bet, you must be willing to lose." The black-clothed masked man, who was barely hanging on to his last breath, smiled miserably and said, "I am Fierce Heaven Blade, Li Chong. Deceiving one's heart and acting rashly, pretending to be a hero of Xianhuang, you deserve to die. My family, is in Hengduan Sky Valley. He smiled bitterly and said, I hope your distinguished self can keep your promise and leave me some descendants. The crowd burst into an uproar. Fierce charge of the heaven-sweeping blade. The first black-clothed masked man to fight was actually heaven-sweeping blade Li Chong. This was a famous expert in the Tao of the saber. Back then, he relied on his sweeping heaven saber to defeat almost everyone under the heavens. After that, he disappeared from the world of mortals. Some people said that this person entered the Tao of the saber and cultivated the Tao of the saber to an even higher level. There were also people who said that this person entered the Western Heaven Holy Palace and no longer stepped into the world of mortals. Who would have thought that he would appear here today? The peerless swordsman had perished in a single day. He no longer had the disdainful splendor of the past when he could sweep the heavens with his saber. Yin Yang's expression was cold as he said faintly, there's no need to rely on luck. Do you want your soul to self-destruct or do you want me to help you? Li Chong took a deep breath and said, since your skills are inferior to others and you have failed, you should have the awareness of a loser. With a loud laugh, his soul force rushed out from the top of his head. Just as it took shape, it self-detonated, turning into a mass of pure spiritual energy that scattered in all directions. However, a few words remained. Don't forget your promise. An unparalleled bladesman of his generation came to a sad end. Everyone had a complicated look in their eyes as they watched a legend of the saber suddenly disappear. Almost everyone had an indescribable and inexplicable feeling in their hearts. Yin Yang's expression remained cold. When he lifted his head abruptly, his eyes stared emotionlessly at the remaining 11 people and said faintly, next. Seeing that heaven-traversing saber was defeated in an instant, the 11 people's initial confidence of victory was shaken. Many of them felt that their abilities were almost on par with heaven-traversing saber Li Chong's. The second and third, in short, the first few who went up would not be able to do well, so they could not help feeling hesitant. After a while, a masked man in black stepped forward and said hatefully, you do have some skills to impersonate me. Yin Yang did not respond at all. Instead, he glanced at the masked man in black who had stepped out of the formation and curled his finger. Presumptuous. The black-clothed masked man swung his saber in a backhand manner. As he leaped up, he circled in midair, and a continuous saber mountain appeared in the sky. Following that, the thousands of saber lights on the continuous saber mountain converged at one point. The incessant saber lights converged to form an endless stream of flashing light, descending from the sky with an unstoppable force. The divine edge flashed again, dancing in the air with extreme agility. With a swoosh, the endless saber veil rose in the opposite direction. It was just a clash of two saber lights that fell from the sky and rose from the ground, but in the eyes of the spectators, they felt an inexplicable sense of bewilderment. It was as if what they were seeing was another secular world. Everything in the mortal world was so real and real. It was like they were in their own dreams. Yin Yang had used his ultimate skill right from the start of the fight, saber truth, saber laic. The seemingly opposing attacks did not produce the expected violent impact when they clashed. Instead, the masked man's saber light was deflected by Yin Yang's saber lacerating worldly bliss, and all of them missed their target. After Yin Yang's cultivation base had advanced, his understanding of saber truth had reached a new level as well. Yin Yang's saber strike was almost at the level of perfection in this technique. Under the saber, the secular world. Although the black-clothed masked man was surprised that his all-out attack had no effect, he reacted quickly and changed his attack. However, just as he was about to change his attack, a fist suddenly appeared in front of him. It was Yin Yang's fist. Yin Yang's gaze was like lightning as he saw through the masked man's weakness. The swift punch had already pierced through the masked man's protective saber web and landed on his face. Bang! The masked man in black could not help but tilt his head back, feeling a sharp pain on his face. Amidst his shock, he instinctively retreated, wanting to distance himself from Yun Yang and counterattack. However, he could only feel a chill on his chest as a saber slashed across his right shoulder all the way down to the left side of his waist. He froze as if he had been electrocuted. A thought flashed through his mind. I've lost? I've lost. I've lost so badly that I have nothing to say. The two battles were over in the blink of an eye. The remaining 10 masked men in black who had a certain understanding of Yun Yang's ability were filled with despair. They had never expected Yun Yang's ability to be so formidable. It was something that they could never hope to match. It could be said that the first encounter with Ferocious Saber, Li Chong, was a coincidence, but the outcome of this battle was similar to the previous one. Yun Yang's ability to accurately grasp the tiny gap between the previous move and the change of move, his unique vision and superb skills had already placed him above everyone else. Thinking back to the two peerless saber forms that had been impeccable, how could they be lucky enough to fight Yun Yang? These people could only be crushed by Yun Yang. After 2 consecutive battles, the rest of the masked men recognized this fact. They could not help cursing inwardly. Yun Yang's ability was completely different from what they had been told. This was the epitome of deceit. The masked men in black's abilities were almost on par with each other. Although there was a slight difference in their abilities, the disparity was not huge. Ferocious Saber's death was a wake-up call for them, but they still had the thought of being lucky, hoping that it was a coincidence. However, the second battle that ended even faster had completely dispelled their fantasies. Yin Yang Bridge. Xiao Jiufan. 3rd level Saint Lord Pinnacle. He had been defeated cleanly by Yun Yang's 2 saber strikes and 1 punch, dead. The remaining 10 masked men in black felt a chill run down their spines. Dongfang Xingchen, who was watching the battle from above, was not only disheartened, but his expression was unusually ugly as well. None of the other chosen's expressions were any better. They thought that they knew Yun Yang's background and cultivation base very well, but when had he become so strong? If you were so strong, why didn't you show it earlier? You could have shown it earlier. If you had, I wouldn't have thought about dealing with you. At least, I would have come up with a more comprehensive plan. Now. I can't back down now. Yun Yang stood in the middle of the battle and said calmly, "2. Who's next?" None of the 10 masked men in black stepped forward for a long while. They were all quiet, their gazes complicated. Their previous calm demeanor was nowhere to be seen. I admit defeat. After some time, one of them took off his mask and said with a bitter smile, "I'm an imposter." Yun Yang's face was devoid of any emotion as he said faintly, "Even if you admit defeat, your Tao will vanish. Your heaven's vow was based on your defeat, and admitting defeat is also a way of expressing your defeat. Come, according to the vow, hand over your life and tell me where your family is. Under heaven's vow, who can be lucky?" Yun Yang looked at the man with a cold gaze. The man's expression was conflicted as he said angrily, "If so, why don't I fight it out with you?" As he spoke, he drew his saber with a swoosh. Yun Yang said faintly, "Let me remind you, you've already lost when you admit defeat. If you fight again, I'm afraid I won't have to deal with you anymore." The masked man in black's expression changed as he suddenly roared, "Then let me die under heaven's punishment." He drew his saber and pointed it straight at Yun Yang. The force was not any weaker than the 2 men before him. It was obvious that he was determined to fight, hoping for a fluke. If he could drag Yun Yang along with him, it would be the most worthwhile. Even if it cost Yun Yang's ability, it was still valuable. It was a pity that heaven's vow came faster than he had imagined. A clap of thunder rang in the air as a bolt of lightning streaked across the sky. The masked man in black's attack stopped abruptly. He did not even have the time to struggle. He did not even leave a word before his soul was destroyed, his body and Tao vanishing. Yun Yang was silent. This man would rather die under heaven's punishment than reveal the whereabouts of his family. It was equivalent to dragging his family down with him, giving up the chance to preserve the last of his bloodline. Yun Yang really did not know what to say. The heavens vow came as scheduled and was fulfilled like a god. Of course, it would not let his family go. It was a demonstration of the authority of heaven's law that had to be fulfilled once the vow was made. There was no such thing as a fluke. Why bother? Yin Yang sighed and raised his head. Who's next? Dongfang Xingchen and the other sons of heaven's expressions grew uglier. At this point, they looked a little menacing. They had painstakingly come up with a plan that did not care about the cost and consequences. They had even chosen tonight's city as the perfect location to carry out the plan. Everything was in their favor, but under Yun Yang's absolute ability, their perfect assassination plan had failed. It had no effect at all. Instead, it had further promoted Yun Yang's immortal reputation. Not only was it a futile effort, it was suicidal. The loss of 13 third-grade Saint Monarchs was even more heart-wrenching. Even for them, they couldn't afford to waste this kind of combat power. As the Saint Lords were killed by Yun Yang one by one and their identities were exposed, everyone basically knew who was behind these people. Saint Lord cultivators were powerful beings who stood at the pinnacle of the entire Xianhuang world. Every single one of them was a precious, high-end fighting force. There were only a handful of them in total. Ordinary people and forces might not know of their current backgrounds. However, for those who were truly in the upper echelons, a single glance at the forces they belonged to would allow them to know who was the one commanding these people. The sons of heaven looked at each other and obtained the information they wanted from the ugly expressions on each other's faces. A few of them looked especially ugly. Dongfang Xingchen, Shimen Huanyu, Beigong Wushuang, and Xinyu, Jia Shixiang, Nantian Yun. While the others were not as pale as the ones before them, they still looked a little gloomy. Lai Kuangfeng, Lanting, Feng Patian, and Huan Wenyuan, who had been the fiercest earlier, did not have much of a change in their expressions. Yin Yang stood in the middle of the field and looked at the mess on the ground. He sighed softly and said, "Actually, the hardest thing in life is how to prove that you are yourself. The truth has proven that this is really difficult to prove. Fortunately, all of you have given me this ingenious method to prove that I am Yun Yang, the bound of universe's supreme cloud." Yin Yang smiled faintly and said, "Thank you, everyone. Sigh, I really didn't expect there to be so many imposters. I don't know if there will be more imposters in the future. I am very worried about this problem." He was just pretending to be innocent after getting what he wanted. There were only a few Saint Monarchs in this world who were of the 3rd level and above. Who else would have the guts to impersonate you? Had they not had enough of death? The facial muscles of the sons of heaven began to twitch. Dongfang Xingchen, who had been controlling the situation, did not even want to say anything. Beigong Wushuang laughed dryly and said, "Lord Supreme Cloud's divine might is indeed unparalleled and dominates the world. Today, haha. Let's just treat this bunch of clowns as putting on a show for us." The farce they've created has also allowed Lord Supreme Cloud to display his divine might and broaden our horizons. Today's banquet will surely be remembered as a battle that will be praised by all. Come, let's drink." Yin Yang's gaze focused on the north for a moment before he turned to Sacred Heart Palace's Great Elder Lei Qianli and said, "Great Elder Lei." Lei Qianli shuddered and forced a smile. "Lord Supreme Cloud." Yin Yang said coldly, "I wonder if Great Elder Lei still has any doubts about who is Lord Supreme Cloud?" Lei Qianli paled. "Lord Supreme Cloud must be joking." Yin Yang replied faintly, "What I'm asking you is, do you still have doubts in your heart?" "How would I have the leisure to joke with you?" Lei Qianli swallowed his anger and said bitterly, "No more." Yin Yang scoffed and said, "How old is Grand Elder Lei this year?" Lei Qianli coughed and laughed dryly. "I wonder what Lord Supreme Cloud means," Yin Yang said faintly. "I think that you, Lei Qianli, have gone senile. This is what I mean, I really can't go all out today, so I'll rest for a day or two. Amp, GT. Chapter 1373. Lei Qianli's face gradually turned pale. He had confirmed the fact that after today, he would be blacklisted by Yun Yang, the hero of the bound of universe. Good days would be hard to come by. However, he could not respond to this and could only smile awkwardly. Yin Yang's cold gaze still swept across the crowd. Whoever his gaze landed on had to lower their head. No one even raised their head, let alone look at him. His lightning-like gaze seemed to be able to penetrate one's heart and see through one's innards. At this moment, Yun Yang's domineering aura overpowered the entire place. At the same time, the 3 heavenly palaces had mobilized their forces. Other than one of the 13 impersonating Yun Yang who was annihilated by Heaven Dao's lightning tribulation for breaking his vow, there was no need to pursue the matter further. The other 12 families' residences had already sent teams to deal with them. Innocent? Cruel? When Yun Yang forced them to make the vow, he had never thought about this question. How could there be so many innocent and uninnocent people in this world? If he were to be forced to his death by them, what would happen to the residents of 9 Supremes? How many families were involved in the residence of 9 Supremes' disciples now? Once they lost their current status and lifestyle, would they be innocent? Since they had chosen to betray the hero for their own selfish desires, disregarding the hero's sacrifice, attempting to make the hero bleed before crying and even die in grievance, they deserved it no matter what price they had to pay. Heroes were also human beings. They could shed their blood for mankind, but what right did they have to protect those ungrateful people? Those people were not human at all, they were scum. The banquet at Golden Knight Tower ended very quickly. Since the farce was over, no one was in the mood to continue. Yin Yang's expression was as usual. He ate and drank as if there was no one else around, feasting and enjoying himself. He also conversed with Shi Wuchen and the others, talking about the recent situation of the residents of 9 Supremes, as well as their respective cultivation realizations. During this period, Ji Lingxi came with a team and discussed with Lei Qianli from the neighboring Sacred Heart Palace. Great Elder Lei, why don't we change rooms? Would you like to go to the other side? Or, you can just leave. The hatred in Lei Qianli's heart was limitless and he couldn't speak for a long time. However, due to the situation, he didn't dare to resist. The incident of Ji Lingxi and Shangguan Lingxiu killing 3 lords was still fresh in his mind. If they could kill those people, it would be even easier for them to kill him, Lei Qianli. Moreover, the people from the Sacred Heart Palace were already restless. A considerable number of them looked at Lei Qianli with unfriendly gazes. If not for the fact that they were in public, they would have stood up and attacked him. We are all here to welcome Lord Supreme Cloud with sincerity. Lord Temple Master's orders were clear. Lord Supreme Cloud's original intention of heading to the Demon Clan was for the sake of the Sacred Heart Palace. Now that he has made an outstanding contribution, not only is his contribution to the bound of universe, but he is also a great hero of the Sacred Heart Palace. Even if all of you die, you must escort Lord Supreme Cloud back safely. But what about you, Lei Qianli? You're actually doubtful too. Also, the things you said and did, do you think we're all blind and deaf? When we return to the Sacred Heart Palace, there will be time to settle the score with you. The Sacred Heart Palace could have shared Supreme Cloud's glory, but after what you've done, the Sacred Heart Palace has lost all its dignity and become a laughing stock. Not only have we become the butt of jokes, but our relationship with Lord Supreme Cloud has also dropped to the freezing point. Let's go. A few Sacred Heart Palace elders stood up and ushered Ji Lingxi and the others in. This way, Lei Qianli could not leave even if he wanted to. Lei Qianli bade farewell with a gloomy face. He, who had always been in a high position, felt that even if he poured out all the water in the world, it would not be able to wash away the shame on his face today. Some of the 12 holy sons also felt embarrassed. After drinking a few cups of wine, some of them began to feel tipsy. Under such circumstances, the banquet naturally ended quickly. However, when Yin Yang came out of the Golden Knight Tower, the moon was already high in the sky. The cold light sprinkled on the ground, and the whole city was quiet. Yin Yang walked in front with his hands clasped behind his back. Shi Wuchen and the others followed quietly behind him, tactfully not disturbing him. Yun Xiaoxin and the other disciples, on the other hand, looked at their sect leader's figure from behind, their eyes gleaming. The little fellows were simple-minded and had long forgotten the previous humiliation. Now, their hearts were filled with the heroic image of their master suppressing the heroes and dominating the world with his saber. Their minds were filled with endless fantasies. If I can be like this one day, facing the world's heroes and shouting, who else? Next. Just thinking about it was enough to make one's head spin. It was a perfect dream. As the group walked forward, Yun Xiaoxin, who was immersed in her reverie, suddenly shouted, who else? Ha 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 ha. The little girl was too immersed in her role and lost control of herself for a moment. After she shouted it out, she felt so good that she could not stop laughing. Everyone looked at her, and as soon as they understood what she meant, they burst into laughter that lasted for a long time. Where do you live? Yin Yang turned to ask Ji Lingxi and Shangguan Lingxiu. What do you want to do? Ji Lingxi pursed her lips. Shi Wuchen and the others winked at each other for a while, thinking, what do I want to do? Does sect leader want to, he he he. Yin Yang coughed and said, it's still early. We've reunited after a long time, and we didn't drink to our heart's content just now. Plus, we're all rubbish. When Wuchen and the others go back to rest, I'll drink with you. Shall we have a chat and talk about our parting experiences? We'll go too. We have a lot to tell Master. Yun Xiaoxin raised her hand and shouted. Luo Dajiang laughed and said, yes, yes, yes. We'll go too. We have a lot to tell boss too. Shi Wuchen slapped Luo Dajiang in the face in exasperation. What are you going to do? What do you want to do? You are a man with a wife. Why are you here to make trouble? Luo Dajiang came to his senses at once and coughed dryly. Yes, we have nothing to do, so we won't go. Yin Yang guffawed, looking carefree. Ji Lingxi chuckled and said, it's still early. Since we all feel that we didn't enjoy ourselves to our heart's content just now, let's leave the rest of the time to ourselves. The two sects can get together and have some fun. Come, let's find a place to drink. Let's go, let's do whatever we want. Everyone cheered in unison. The reunion, which they had not seen for a long time, lasted until the second half of the night, almost dawn. During this period, Yin Yang could clearly feel countless divine senses probing him, but they disappeared as soon as they confirmed that this was the case. Yin Yang was calm, gulping down the wine and eating the meat, not taking it to heart at all. Now that he had Ji Lingxi and Shangguan Lingxiu, the two fake saints, by his side, he was invincible. Even if the Phoenix Emperor and the Dragon Emperor, the two enemies, came together, Yin Yang felt that he would dare to lie down and sleep in front of them, let alone a sneak attack from a saint. The people from the two sects staggered from the wine, still in high spirits. Ling Xiaozui, Du Guchou, and Gu Chaoyang had downed 9 pots of wine with Yin Yang. Everyone could not help but recall everything that had happened in the Tianxian continent back then, feeling as if it was no longer a dream. Du Guchou was drunk, which was rare. He had sealed his spiritual energy and drank until he was dead drunk, but he was still guffawing. Wifey, I'll be able to see you very soon. Ha ha ha, after a few guffaws, he burst into tears. His wife had passed away for many years and Du Guchou had been searching for a way to resurrect her. Now that he had witnessed Yun Yang's dominance over the crowd, he could clearly feel that the day he had been dreaming of was not far away. At least, it was no longer as unreachable as before. He was trembling with excitement. The drinking lasted until dawn before everyone returned to their rooms to sleep. Yin Yang, on the other hand, had been captured by Ji Lingxi and Shangguan Lingxiu into their own rooms. What exactly were they going to do? Quick, quick, quick. The two ladies stood before Yin Yang, anticipation and impatience written all over their faces. Yin Yang was genuinely bewildered. What were they doing? Had the two ladies fallen in love? Was there a need for them to be so eager? They should at least be a little more reserved. Yin Yang was rather bashful. I'm not ready yet, what are you hesitating for? Take off your mask quickly and let us have a look, Ji Lingxi said excitedly. Yin Yang was speechless. What? Both of you called me into the room in such a hurry just to see this? Although this is also erotic, but, Yin Yang felt a little dejected. Shangguan Lingxiu looked hopeful as she said, hurry up, I can't wait anymore. Take that thing off quickly. I want to have a good look, see if it looks good. You probably don't know this, but I love little foxes the most. Yin Yang was speechless. Yin Yang did not feel well. He was stupefied and dumbfounded. He stared at Ji Lingxi and Shangguan Lingxiu with wide eyes. After a while, he said helplessly, we haven't seen each other for so many years. Shouldn't we be catching up first? Shouldn't we be pleasantly surprised to reunite after such a long time? Shouldn't we? Cut the useless crap with me. You're just spouting nonsense. Ji Lingxi said domineeringly, what do you mean by catching up? You're already here and you're not even wearing anything. What's there to catch up on? Take off your mask quickly and let us admire it. We've been looking forward to seeing your current face for so long. Can you stop keeping us in suspense? Shangguan Lingxiu pressed her lips together and said, even if we want to catch up, we can't feel anything with your mask on. Take it off quickly and we'll accompany you to say our goodbyes. Yin Yang looked miserable as he sighed inwardly. Am I keeping them in suspense? Honestly, how is this possible? Seeing that Yin Yang did not move, the two girls exchanged glances and charged forward. Ji Lingxi pressed Yin Yang down directly. Sister Lingxiu, quick! Shangguan Lingxiu was quick as well. With a swoosh, she pulled Yin Yang's mask off, revealing a helpless fox face to the two girls. It had pointy ears, a pointy mouth, and rolling eyeballs. Ha 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 ha. Ji Lingxi could not hold back her laughter as she fell onto the bed, laughing uncontrollably. Shangguan Lingxiu tried to hold back her laughter for a moment, but she could not help pursing her lips and shrugging her shoulders. It was obvious that she was having a hard time holding it in. Yin Yang said indignantly, Are you two really so funny? No, no. The two girls spoke in unison, trying their best to keep the smiles on their faces, but it was only for a moment before they burst out laughing. Yin Yang sighed at the sky. He now had a feeling that men and women, whether it was their physical or psychological structures, were really different. For example, he only wanted to know what they had been through. He wanted to know if their journey had been tough, if there was anything that hurt them, and if there was anything that needed his help. However, the only thing they were concerned about was whether his fox face was cute, whether it was interesting or not, also, whether he looked good. No, it should be whether he looked good in their eyes. I can't go on like this anymore. Yin Yang sighed unconsciously and extended his arms to hug Ji Lingxi, hoping to pray for some support. Don't touch me. Ji Lingxi looked at him warily. You should be prepared to be beaten if you want to hug me. Yin Yang turned to hug Shangguan Lingxiu. Don't come over. Shangguan Lingxiu looked wary. You want to touch me with that fox head of yours? Yin Yang's eyes shone as he quickly changed the topic. Actually, I've really missed you all these years. Shangguan Lingxiu's expression softened immediately. Ji Lingxi laughed on the bed. Sister Lingxiu, don't be fooled by this fellow. There's no one else in this world who can compete with his mouth. Shangguan Lingxiu was bewildered. This fellow hugging us just now was fake. He just wanted to try. Ji Lingxi could read Yin Yang's mind like the back of her hand. He's been wanting to do something naughty since a few years ago, but he's never been able to match his opponent and has to take the beating instead. I tried it just now. I still don't stand a chance here, but you said, ha ha ha, you've seen the difference now. Shangguan Lingxiu's mind raced as she blushed. What she had said just now was you want to touch me with that fox head of yours, but she had not mentioned anything about the recoil. Didn't that mean that he could touch her when he wasn't wearing a fox's head? No wonder this fellow's foxy face was smiling so wretchedly. Yun Yang said seriously, I didn't mean it that way. I'm not that kind of person. Shangguan Lingxiu snorted with a flushed face and said, You're that kind of person. I don't think you have any good intentions. After a bout of laughter, she returned to the topic at hand. How can you go, Foxhead? I'll probably have to attain the cultivation base of a saint before I can break the demonic race's heaven-sealing seal. Speaking of this, Yun Yang heaved another long sigh. The heaven-sealing seal had sealed more than 90% of his unique ability. If he had not broken through to the 7th stage of the endless divine art previously, he would have been in real danger if he said he was not afraid of this battle. Although his cultivation base had improved tremendously, it did not mean that he was completely safe in the bound of universe. The reason why these holy sons had only sent out their saint lords to deal with him was probably because of the ability he had displayed previously. Now that half of his ability had been exposed, if he were to be pursued further, if the assailant was a half-saint, he might not dare say that he could handle it. Chapter 1374. They were all deleted. I am the Supreme is taking a leave of absence. Currently typing, please wait a moment. After the content has been updated, please refresh the page to receive the latest update. Chapter 1375. What level of cultivation base are you at now? Is it enough to handle the situation? I can see that none of the holy children and many other forces are kind to you, Ji Lingxi asked with concern. I'm probably a 4th level beginner Saint Lord. Yun Yang was a little depressed. I've just broken through recently. I'm afraid there will be a period of stagnation in my progress. My actual cultivation base, compared to the current situation, sigh, it's still not enough. Ha. Ji Lingxi chuckled. Ha. Shangguan Lingxiu chuckled. Both girls were a little aggrieved. Both of us boasted that we've improved tremendously, but we're only 2nd or 3rd level Saint Venerables now. This fellow came up with us and is already a 4th level Saint Lord. Yet, he's still complaining about the slow pace. Are you mocking us? Or are you showing off? Both girls' gazes were unfriendly as they thought about it. What should we do next? Faced with this question, the three of them had very different perspectives. Ji Lingxi and Shangguan Lingxiu's choices were identical. After this, at least one of us has to be by your side. If there's a strong enemy that you can't handle, we'll take care of it. Both girls were confident in their self-defense state. They were impenetrable to all spells and all evils. In short, all attacks that came would not harm them, but the enemy would have to endure the most extreme counterattack. Up until now, from the Tianxian continent to the bound of universe, be it the humans, the demon race or the profound beasts, there had never been a single living thing that could break through this layer of defense. No, there had never been an enemy who could survive the recoil of danger. There was still one exception, Yun Yang. This fellow was the most resistant to shock, his skin was thick and tough. Of course, everyone knew the real reason why he did not die from the recoil, so there was no need to elaborate further. Ji Lingxi's train of thought was clear. Now that you've returned and we're reunited, the residents of 9 Supremes and the 9th Supremes will naturally merge into one. We heard that you've caused quite a commotion over there, claiming to be the first superior class celestial luck banner. Let's merge the residents of 9 Supremes directly. Sister Lingxiu will go back to reorganize the residents of 9 Supremes later, then bring some men to the residents of 9 Supremes. I'll stay by your side, or I'll go back to reorganize my men and merge them. Ji Lingxi was incomparably domineering. You can choose between these two options. Yun Yang smiled bitterly. These two choices were essentially the same. What else was there to choose? Shangguan Lingxiu chuckled. If it's really difficult, both of us can go with you. It's the same for old Gu and the rest to go back and pack up their men. We've been prepared for this and have come to a consensus with old Gu and the rest. The bitter smile on Yun Yang's face deepened. I'm not against the merger, but what are your plans after that? Yun Yang asked. What plans? We don't have any plans anymore. Ji Lingxi snorted and rolled her eyes. When we couldn't find you, we had to do everything we could. Now that we found you, why do you still need us to work? Shangguan Lingxiu coughed and said, I can help with the internal affairs. Yun Yang rested a hand on his forehead. This attitude of these two women, this behavior, it was clearly the rhythm of marrying a man to marry a man, getting dressed and eating. Sisters, this isn't something you can just walk away from now on. Can the disciples of the residents of 9 Supremes accept all of it? Yin Yang frowned and said, Old Gu, we know Ling Xiaozui and the rest very well, and we have a close relationship. I'll make arrangements if I say so. The guest elders in the sect are fine, but what about the disciples you two have taken in? They were the leading disciples when they were in the residence of 9 Supremes, but it won't be the same anymore when they're here. There's a lot more to talk about, such as clarity, resources, treatment, and so on. As a teacher, how can I not consider the feelings of my own disciples? I see that you're worried about this. Elder Gu has already discussed this with us. Ji Lingxi said, the residence of 9 Supremes was founded because of the residence of 9 Supremes. Be it us, Elder Gu and the rest, or the disciples, we've long known about this. Although we don't have the status of a leader, we have the new title of the residence of 9 Supremes' wives. The disciples we've taken in are still our disciples, at least in name. In this case, I believe their status won't be any lower than the other Supremes' disciples. Besides, we've long heard about the residence of 9 Supremes. The residence of 9 Supremes emphasizes healthy competition among the disciples, and will still have to look at their individual abilities in the future. If they're really capable of earning their position, they can just snatch it. If they're not, who can they blame when they're dealt with? Yin Yang thought about it and said, all right. Yin Yang agreed with the two women. The merger of the two residences was inevitable. Since it was unavoidable, the subsequent matters would have to wait until after the merger. Whatever problems arose, they would be solved. Man was man, and there would always be a solution no matter how big the problem was. It would be unrealistic to attempt to solve all the problems now. Let's leave the residence of the 9th Supremes as it is. However, I don't want you two to follow me. I don't need you two to follow me. Yin Yang smiled faintly. This is a martial world journey that I need to face alone. It has nothing to do with anything else. If I rely on the two of you to create an absolutely safe environment, it'll be an obstacle that's difficult to overcome in my cultivation journey. It's a physical obstacle, and a mental obstacle as well. It'll be difficult for me to improve further. The two women agreed to Yun Yang's words after a moment of contemplation. They did not pester him further. After all, they were all high-level martial artists. They were well aware of the crux of the matter. The cultivation journey focused on training one's heart. Once a martial artist's life and death experience was interfered with by external forces, his confidence would be greatly reduced. Even if he had the ability to handle the situation, he would still be hesitant. When faced with similar situations in the future, it would only worsen. How far could he go on the path of recovery? The two women's desire to protect Yun Yang's safety was understandable and unquestionable. However, to Yun Yang, there would be endless obstacles in his cultivation journey. Perhaps he would never be able to progress further. Speaking of which, the cultivation base achievement of both of you is what truly puzzles me. Yun Yang was rather puzzled. According to your encounters and mentors, even if your cultivation base can't be compared to mine, it shouldn't stop there. Perhaps in the eyes of others, Ji Lingxi and Shangguan Lingxiu's cultivation base advancement speed was already unimaginably terrifying, rarely seen since time immemorial. However, Yin Yang knew very well that it was not normal for the two women to only be second or third grade Supreme Saint now. Ji Lingxi was someone who could advance even in her dreams, while Shangguan Lingxiu's master was an expert in the universe. How could he not have the means to help Shangguan Lingxiu improve her cultivation base as soon as possible? Ji Lingxi snorted and pouted. We're so sorry that our cultivation base is so low. We've lowered your status as the bound of Universe Supreme. Are you looking down on us sisters? Do you want to spar right here and now? Ji Lingxi's words were rather harsh. If they were to fight anyone else in this world, they would only end up being beaten up. It was especially so when they were up against Yun Yang. Back in the day, a certain someone had been beaten up like a grandchild. Even though their cultivation base was slightly different now, the situation had not improved. If they were to really fight, a certain someone would still be beaten up like a grandchild. Can you break my divine light shield? Shangguan Lingxiu, on the other hand, was more honest. She smiled and said, you don't have to worry about our cultivation base. Yin Yang understood immediately and could not help feeling inexplicably touched. So you're worried about me. In an instant, he understood. It was not that the two women could not improve faster in their cultivation, but they were worried about him. Were they worried that they would leave him behind if they improved too quickly? That he could not accept it? Strictly speaking, no one in this world, other than Yun Yang, had the right to comment on the two ladies' cultivation years and the fact that they had already attained the second tier of Supreme Saint and above. There was no one else in the bound of universe who could improve faster than this since the beginning of time. Yin Yang understood it in an instant. He could not help but feel warmth in his heart, his gaze exceptionally gentle. It had to be said that Ji Lingxi and Shangguan Lingxiu's personalities were the ideal wives and loving mothers that every man in this world yearned for. Although Ji Lingxi was a little unruly and her words were more forceful, her consideration for Yun Yang was exactly the same as Shangguan Lingxiu's. Thinking about it again, before he went to the demon race, his cultivation base was only at the level of a royal saint. It had only been about a year and a half since then. If it were not for the fortuitous encounter that allowed him to harvest so much karmic chi in the demon clan and the countless sparring sessions in the East Celestial Palace, his cultivation base progress would probably be similar to Ji Lingxi and Shangguan Lingxiu's current level. There's no need to be like this. Yin Yang sighed. Although you're not afraid, he could not help but chuckle halfway through his words. It was really useless for these two women to cultivate. There was hardly any place for them to use their skills. No one in this world could hurt them, not even himself. What was the use for them to raise their cultivation base? They could only be used for sparring. It was no wonder that they dared to wait for him so leisurely. There was no one, no force, no living being in this world that could break through their protective divine light. Even if they wanted to be competitive, it would be difficult to find an opponent. No matter what, you still have to improve your ability as soon as possible. Yin Yang reminded them, only by taking the initiative in your own hands can you avoid being passive to the greatest extent. You can't always expect others to hit you. Even if you have this trump card, sometimes you'll still be wronged. Ji Lingxi gritted her teeth and said, I know. Isn't this what happened today? I've been wronged. If I'm strong enough, none of these people here today will live. One day, justice will be served just like in Tianxian continent in the past. Yin Yang rolled his eyes at once. Big sister, you were even more in the limelight than I was when we were in Tianxian continent. Shangguan Lingxiu and Ji Lingxi's heads were filled with questions once they thought about what happened at the banquet that night. They were filled with anger. Although it was Yun Yang himself who had connived and had a purpose in mind, causing the incident to be magnified, the two ladies still felt indescribably frustrated. No matter what. Her man had made such a huge contribution to the entire human race. He had risked his life and risked his life. Not only did he not enjoy the least bit of honor when he came back, he even had to suffer such unfair treatment. Even if there were other motives involved, it wouldn't do. We can't even bear to bully our own man. Who do you think you are? Among the two ladies, Shangguan Lingxiu was the most indignant about this matter. She was born of a family of generals and all the men in her family had died in battle for the country. The incident in Tianxian continent had almost humiliated the fallen heroes. The past was still fresh in her mind. Now that it was her man's turn, the two ladies could not help but feel indignant and resentful. You're quite magnanimous. You're even willing to spare the bloodline of scum who committed such a shady business. You're simply being soft-hearted when dealing with such scum. Where did the decisive and straightforward Tianxian think tank of the past go? They didn't treat you with the courtesy of a hero, so why are you acting so righteous and giving them leeway? Ji Lingxi pursed her lips and said unhappily, even if we take 10,000 steps back, it'll still take a lot of effort for us to run around the 11 locations that were revealed, won't it? Do you have a lot of time to waste now? Yin Yang chuckled. Lingxi, you're thinking too much. Why would we need to deal with those remnants? Those families should have been completely annihilated by now. Not a single one of them was left alive. After all, they're eradicating the rebels. Leaving behind a torch will only cause endless trouble. Yin Yang chuckled. Shangguan Lingxiu frowned and asked, did the 3 heavenly palaces make a move? Yin Yang's expression was indifferent. I've helped them find so many scum. Do I still have to deal with the aftermath myself? Are those people just sitting around doing nothing? So what about the rest of them? Especially those sons of saints. If we really want to talk about it, they're the instigators, the masterminds, the culprits. Shangguan Lingxiu said. We don't need to care. I'm afraid that even if I'm willing to let go now, the 3 palace masters won't let go either. Those people have gone too far, they've crossed the line too much. As the saying goes, they're digging their own graves. Yin Yang smiled. Both of you can go back without worry. Just reorganize the people in your sects and come to the residence of 9 Supremes. Once both of you leave, those who are against me will stir up trouble immediately. That's too risky. Ji Lingxi and Shangguan Lingxiu came to a sudden realization. Their stunning performance at the banquet had chilled the hearts of Dongfang Xingchen and the others. They had determined that the cultivation base of the 2 ladies was at least at the level of a saint. With the 2 female guards protecting the fox-faced Yun Yang, they could only watch helplessly. Now that Yun Yang had asked the 2 ladies to leave, it was equivalent to opening the door for those who were plotting against them. How could the 2 ladies be at ease? Those people don't know the background of the both of you. Just based on your stunning appearance, everyone has long been scared silly. Yin Yang chuckled bitterly. I can even say with certainty that if the both of you hadn't made it clear that you're on my side, this banquet might not have ended so hastily. They might have something else up their sleeves, but they stopped out of fear of the both of you. In other words, as long as the both of you are still with me, those who want to go against me won't dare to do anything. Ji Lingxi bit her lip and said, You have your reasons. Let us discuss this. Yin Yang watched as the 2 ladies whispered into each other's ears for a long time before they turned around to play rock paper scissors. Then, he turned around and said, then we'll go back to prepare. Later, ask the residents of 9 Supremes to send a few people back as well so that we can handle the corresponding matters after we go over. Yin Yang was relieved and said, Of course. It'll be too dangerous for Wuchen and the rest to stay here after the both of you leave. I'll ask them to go back and all of you leave. Only then will I have nothing to worry about. I only have to take care of myself. It's decided then. Ji Lingxi and Shangguan Lingxiu were surprisingly easy to talk to. Both of them agreed to whatever Yun Yang said obediently, making sect leader Yun feel like his status had risen considerably. He felt like he was the one who had the authority of a husband. This had never happened before. Then, it was the 2 ladies' turn to listen to a certain someone boast about what happened in the holy land of Tian Fa and the demon race, exclaiming from time to time. Under the focus of their sparkling eyes, Yun Yang's enthusiasm grew. Since there were no outsiders present, the 2 ladies removed their veils. Shangguan Lingxiu was a stunning beauty while Ji Lingxi, honestly, it had been a long, long time since Yun Yang and Ji Lingxi had seen each other's faces in their entirety. Thinking back to the past, they would either disguise themselves, apply ointment, or even blacken themselves. Now that they met again, it felt like they had met again after a lifetime. There were not many words that could describe Ji Lingxi's face. There was only one word that could be used to describe it: perfect. Perfect skin tone, perfect proportions, perfect facial features, perfect aura, perfect. Everything was perfect. Everything was perfect, and there was not a single flaw to be found. What are you looking at? Ji Lingxi saw that Yun Yang had suddenly stopped talking. She looked up and saw that the fox was staring at her blankly. She could not help blushing and whining. Shengguan Lingxiu said sourly, "Younger sister Lingxi is much prettier than me, isn't she?" Ahahaha. Spring orchid and autumn chrysanthemum, each in their own way. Yin Yang's eyes were filled with reverie as he chuckled. His eyes flickered, already imagining things like this and that after they got married. This fellow is up to no good. Ji Lingxi scrunched her nose and commented, "His expression and gaze are too perverted." Shengguan Lingxiu shared the same sentiment. When this fellow had looked at her with narrowed eyes just now, she had actually felt like she had been stripped naked. This fellow's gaze now was extremely invasive. If you look at us like that again, we'll beat you to death, you stinky fox. Ji Lingxi said fiercely. If you were still a pretty boy, you would look at us and we would look at you. Each of us was pleasing to the eye and a feast for the eyes, but you're a fox now. Coupled with that perverted expression, it's truly unbearable to look at. We just want to hit you. Heh heh heh. Yin Yang chuckled and said, "I don't need to look at you like that. Besides, it's only a matter of time before we get married. Both of you will be mine then. I can look at you however I want then, right? I'll strip you naked and see. You're courting death. Pervert." Before his words echoed in the air, the two ladies pounced on him at the same time, beating him up with flushed faces. Who's yours? Who's going to marry you? Dream on. Heh heh heh. Yin Yang hugged his head as he endured the beating, feeling delighted as the punches landed on his flesh. As a single dog, what could be better than having two peerless beauties as fiancés? You're hitting me now, but it'll be my turn to hit you after we get married. Yin Yang thought proudly, imagining how he would deal with these two fairies after they got married. Blood rushed to his head, his face flushed, and he almost lost control of his impulse, but his eyes could not help glinting with a wolfish gleam. The two ladies, who did not know what was going on, suddenly felt a chill run down their spines. Looking at the wolfish gleam in the fellow's eyes, they could not help feeling angry and embarrassed. Without another word, they joined forces to beat him up again. You stinky pervert. Pervert indeed. Early in the morning, sect leader Yun, who had been called a stinky pervert and pervert for the entire night, sent his two fiancés home respectfully with a mask on his face. Only then did the two ladies speak no more, calling out to their subordinates without further ado. Ling Xiaozui and Du Guchou had wanted to bid farewell to Yun Yang, but with Ji Lingxi's command, the troop departed at once. Ling Xiaozui and the rest could only smile bitterly at Yun Yang and follow quickly. Yin Yang's personality has changed quite a bit. Along the way, Shengguan Lingxiu said rather joyfully, "It looks like coming to the bound of universe is a good thing for him." Ji Lingxi nodded and sighed softly. In the Tianxian continent, he carried too many burdens. Now that he's in the bound of universe, he can finally let it go and act according to his heart. I thought that the saying, "It's a waste of youth if one is not frivolous," didn't apply to him, but it looks like it's still a wise saying. Shengguan Lingxiu sighed sympathetically. You're right. He only looks like he's in his 20s now. When he was in Tianxian, he was like a little old man, thinking about this and that. You have no idea how suffocating it was when he appeared in front of me as Supreme Cloud. Sigh, Ji Lingxi teased, "Sister Lingxiu, weren't you attracted to Supreme Cloud because of how wise and far-sighted he was back then, like an old man? You were seduced by him just like that, and now you're sighing." Shengguan Lingxiu was embarrassed and said angrily, "What about you? How did you get seduced by him?" Ji Lingxi was smug. "I wasn't seduced by him," Shengguan Lingxiu scoffed. "You weren't seduced by him. You came to him on your own accord, you threw yourself at him." Ji Lingxi's embarrassment turned into anger. That's still better than someone. He says that he'll repay the favor with his body, but he's actually overjoyed deep down. The two girls bickered along the way. Soon, they had traveled thousands of miles, but they came to an abrupt halt. Finger guessing. Scissors. Scissors. Rock. You've lost. Lingxi snorted and said, "You go if you've lost." Shangguan Lingxiu said gleefully, "All right, I'll go then. I'm willing to admit defeat. Look at that horny face of yours. Don't mess things up." Lingxi said sourly, "You really have to be more careful. Don't let him find out that you're going to be eaten up while you're trying to protect him." "I don't need you to tell me that." As Shangguan Lingxiu spoke, she had already drifted thousands of feet away, rushing back at lightning speed. She could not wait any longer. "Humph. Let's go." Lingxi snorted in annoyance. It was because she did not want a certain someone to be too complacent that she had said that whoever lost the finger-guessing game would go back to protect the rascal. Who would have thought that she would actually win? How disappointing. Lingxi and the others left. It was Shi Wuchen, Luo Dajiang, Kong Luoyue, and the others' turn. Their gazes towards Yunyang were filled with resentment. There should be a limit to your preference for a lover over a friend. It was too obvious at a time and place like this. All of you have families. Can't you empathize with the desire of a single person to have a family? Yunyang reprimanded them directly. Why are all of you pulling such a long face? Come, come, this lord has brought something good this time. You guys can take advantage of it. The group perked up at once and gathered around him. These are all good stuff that can improve one's cultivation base. Yunyang gave each of them a portion. I urgently need all of you to make the best use of your time and improve your cultivation base. I think the war is not far away. Shi Wuchen and the others were shocked. The war between the bound of universe and the demon race? How could that be? Yunyang nodded deeply. Why not? It should be within these few years. As soon as Yunyang said this, Shi Wuchen and the others felt their hearts sink. The war with the demon race was the ultimate cultivation goal of every martial artist in the bound of universe. Everyone dreamed of going to the battlefield to slay the demon race and make a name for themselves. Many prominent families and sects had built their foundations for tens of thousands of years through the war with the demon race. However, everyone had a clearer understanding of the degree of danger involved in the war with the demon race. It was also daunting. 10,000 people went to the battlefield, and it would be considered good if only a dozen or so could survive in the end. Someone had once said that the Bloody Soul Mountain was 100,000 feet high, and it was all piled up with the bones of heroes. To the survivors who had participated in the Battle of the Bloody Soul Mountain, this was not an exaggeration at all. After hundreds of thousands of years of war between the human race and the demon race in the bound of universe, the lives of hundreds of millions of cultivators had been sacrificed. These 2 rings are my recent gains. Yunyang took out 2 rings and handed them to Shi Wuchen solemnly. No matter what, we can't lose them. As long as we bring them back, the residents of 9 Supreme's cultivation needs for the next 3,000 years will no longer be in doubt. Shi Wuchen was shocked when he heard that, his hand trembling as he took the rings. Shi Wuchen's cultivation base was now a second-grade Supreme Saint. Whether it was his eyesight or experience, they were all extraordinary. The scale of the residents of 9 Supremes was also growing larger and larger. From top to bottom, there were almost 20,000 people. It was almost double the number compared to when Yunyang left. However, Yunyang already knew the number, and the resources that could sustain the cultivation of over 20,000 people for 3,000 years. How much wealth would that be? These resources must be safely delivered to Qian Duo. He will make proper use of them. Don't worry. Shi Wuchen put away the 2 rings solemnly. Even if all of us die, these 2 rings will return safely. Yunyang rolled his eyes. What are you talking about? Do you need to risk your lives for a mere treasure? The first thing you need to do is to return safely. With me here, the possibility of you being intercepted and killed on the way is not high. The 3 heavenly palaces may even lend you a helping hand. But you still need to be careful of accidents. Then, Yin Yang met with the 30 to 40 disciples who had followed him here and gave each of them some quality resources. When we return, everyone must still do your best to cultivate and improve your cultivation base to the highest limit. Yin Yang took a deep breath and said, I won't say much else. Everyone, please remember, when the war comes, try your best to improve your ability to the 3rd grade Supreme Saint. Otherwise, when you go to the battlefield, you will only be cannon fodder. Annihilated in an instant, this is not a lie. As he spoke, he turned to Shi Wuchen and said, now is the critical moment. Don't be stingy with the consumption of resources. Even if you have to use resources, you must increase the strength of these little fellows. I believe that after this meeting, you have learned the importance of cultivation base and strength, haven't you? Shi Wuchen took a deep breath and said, don't worry. He was at least a 3rd grade Supreme Saint. Upon hearing that he had just advanced to the Saint Emperor realm, the few eldest disciples who were still complacent now had bitter expressions on their faces. Master, you said that advancing one's cultivation base is as easy as cabbages. How can it be so easy? The eyes of Yun Xiaoxin, Hu Xiaofan, and Bai Yexing flickered. They would cultivate harder when they went back, and even if it meant risking their lives, they would improve their cultivation base and never become cannon fodder. Yun Xiaoxin rolled her pretty big eyes as she looked at her junior brothers and made up her mind, I must be faster than them. I'll go into seclusion as soon as I return to the sect. How can a 3rd grade Supreme Saint be my goal? I want to break through to the level of a Saint Emperor. When Master goes back, I'll go to him every day and cry. No matter what, I can get more resources from him. Humph. Well, all of you can go back now. When I'm done with my business, I'll go back as soon as possible. Shi Wuchen hesitated for a moment and said, there's still the matter of Phoenix Cry sect. Now, the people of Phoenix Cry sect are wavering. Perhaps they have the intention to join the residents of 9 Supremes. Yun Yang immediately thought of the line he had laid out. He could not help but smile and said, there's no hurry. Let's talk about this when I go back. All right. Shi Wuchen and the others stayed for one more day. At night, they quietly left Tonite City. Take care, boss. Don't worry. Chapter 1376. After a day and a night, many of them felt as if time had dragged on like a year. The 12 chosen saints, who had always been graceful and magnanimous in front of others, wore grim expressions as they held an emergency meeting in their respective residences. Everyone was displeased that such a huge mistake had been made in the case against Yun Yang. Other than that, the Sacred Heart Palace's Lei Qianli was also plotting something. In the secret chamber, 3 people were gathered together. One of them was Lei Qianli. Now that things have come to this, how should we end it? Lei Qianli's face was dark, filled with worry. This matter had also exceeded his expectations. Who would have thought that there would suddenly be 2 such powerful women? With these 2 women by Yun Yang's side, it was absolutely impossible to kill him. It's all right. The person beside him had a lean face, 3 locks of long beard fluttering in front of his chest. Although he was sitting, he still looked tall and straight, exuding an indescribable elegance. If Yun Yang were here and saw this person with his own eyes, he would definitely be shocked, perhaps even scared out of his wits. This was because this person had the appearance of the Phoenix Emperor. He said faintly, from your description, we can basically tell that these 2 women are the descendants of peerless experts. Their counterforce isn't because of their own abilities, it's only because of the protective aura that their elders have bestowed upon them. This can already be proven by the fact that they didn't attack directly to kill all of you. Yin Yang has reappeared in the world this time and acted in such a high-profile manner. It's obvious that he's here for a reason. Leaving these 2 women here will instead add to both parties' worries. It's hard for us to do anything, but Yun Yang himself won't be able to do much either. Therefore, these two women will definitely leave after this. Even if they don't want to leave, Yun-yang will think of a way to make them leave. Lei Qinli and the other person who was hidden in a cloud of smoke nodded slowly. Once these two women leave, the chosen saints will strike again. Because of these two women, their desire to kill Yun-yang will only grow stronger. What we need to do is much simpler. We only need to deliver a fatal blow at the most critical moment. When the time comes, you'll be the one to take action. The person who had the face of the Phoenix Emperor looked at the person in the cloud of smoke. He paused for a moment, then said, however, you must not be too hasty. You must only attack when you are completely confident. You must ensure that your attack will hit. The person in the smoke said in a strange voice, understood. What if he can't force Yun-yang to that extent? Lei Qinli asked worriedly, I've observed Yun-yang's decisiveness in killing, and his cultivation base has obviously surpassed the level of a third-grade Saint Monarch. Can the actions of those sons of Saint force him to the point of desperation? That person said indifferently, if we can't reach that point, then we won't make a move. We would rather miss this opportunity. Trust my judgment. If it's not to that extent, then even if we make a move, it'll be useless. We definitely won't be able to kill him. However, I believe that the Chosen won't be willing to let this matter rest. Once they miss this opportunity to kill Yun-yang, they will surely have a follow-up move. The only thing we need to worry about now is you, Great Elder Lei. Your position will be very awkward from now on. Lei Qinli smiled bitterly. Has it come to the point where I need to end things? It has, and it's to the point where you'll die if you don't end things. Lei Qinli sighed. After a long, long time, he said fiercely, very well. Yun-yang sat cross-legged in his room. At this moment, he was the only guest in this enormous inn that could accommodate thousands of people. Before Ji Lingxi left, she had booked the entire inn for a whole month. Yun-yang's deific consciousness filled the entire space of the inn, monitoring everything within a few thousand feet radius. He did not probe further because there was no need to. Shi Wuchen and the others had been gone for half a day. At this moment, the sun was gradually moving towards the west. As the sun set, the first light of dawn was about to fade, but there was still no movement in the surroundings. Looks like I still need some time to prepare. Their previous losses have hurt them badly, and they're going to be weak after this. Yun-yang pondered. If it's not that they're going to be weak after this, then they're worried? I really don't know what else they have to be cautious about. Lingxi and Lingxiu have already left. I believe they've already found out about their whereabouts. Or perhaps, they're going to send out their half-saint experts in order to achieve their goal without any more mistakes. Yin-yang raised his head to look at the sky, full of doubts. Where was Dongfang Haoren? What was he doing? As he pondered, a sudden warning flashed in his mind. Without a second thought, Yin-yang had already gone to the top of the inn. As the saber light shone brightly, he had already soared thousands of feet into the air. The saber light shimmered like a rainbow across the sky, but it was also like the clearest route that marked Yun-yang's direction. However, when the saber light ended, Yun-yang's silhouette had already disappeared. 3 silhouettes landed at the spot where Yun-yang had been standing. Their eyes were fixed on the saber light that was still flickering in the air, and their expressions were unusually ugly. How presumptuous. Yin-yang had boldly left, but he had left his direction of departure. To these people who had come to ambush him, it was undoubtedly a great provocation. I'm right here. Come and kill me if you're so capable. The 3 of them snorted coldly and gave chase. Along the way, the 3 of them whispered to each other through deific consciousness. Brother Lu, we're pursuing Supreme Cloud so brazenly and brazenly. Our palace lords will definitely know about it later. I'm afraid this matter won't be easy to resolve. One of them transmitted his voice to the other. Clearly, he was filled with apprehension and hoped to receive some consolation. Is there something wrong with your brain? Another person transmitted his voice in a cold and stern manner. Why? The cold brother Lu spoke faintly. You can't be thinking that the lords of the 3 heavenly palaces are idiots, can you? The person who had spoken earlier was even more confused. Forgive this young brother's ignorance. Please speak frankly, brother Lu. As brother Lu flew forward, he said, so you're the one who's really stupid. This time, he did not wait for the other to speak, continuing on his own accord. He had already confirmed that the person who had asked this question, his longtime friend, was actually too dumb. The situation is clear now. Not only do the palace lords know about our current actions, but I believe that the 3 palace lords have been aware of the sons of Holy Lands coming out to deal with Supreme Cloud since the beginning. To a certain extent, this incident was caused by the 3 palace lords' connivance. Huh? You still don't understand? Use that wooden head of yours and think hard. Think about the entire sequence of events. If the palace lords didn't connive or even incite the sons of Holy Lands to do this, but instead changed it to a celestial palace confinement order and ordered those outside to return immediately, wouldn't all the hidden dangers that could threaten Supreme Cloud's safety be resolved? If not, why would all the sons of Holy Lands of the 3 heavenly palaces appear at the same place at such a time? Or are there no restrictions at all? Each of the sons of Holy Lands is surrounded by experts. Who can win against such manpower? The person who had spoken earlier was utterly confused. Huh? Is that so? The masterminds behind Supreme Cloud this time are actually the 3 palace lords? This. The person's mind was in a state of chaos. At that moment, even his thoughts seemed to have frozen. He was completely dumbfounded. If it weren't for the palace lord's connivance, how could the sons of Holy Lands have such a huge responsibility to act so brazenly? Although everyone had found an excuse to deceive the world in dealing with Supreme Cloud this time, which one of the excuses they had found was tenable? They're all extremely lame excuses. Up to this point, they've openly carried out the assassination. Anyone who isn't stupid would know very well that the sons of Holy Lands want to kill Supreme Cloud, the continent's hero. If you still don't understand what I've said, then, there's no need for you to understand. Brother Lu's gaze was cold. The person who had spoken earlier gradually slowed down, obviously putting most of his thoughts on the matter. After a while, he scratched his head and smiled bitterly. I still don't understand the root of this. Why is it like this? Brother Lu heaved a long sigh. Looking at this old friend of his, a sense of helplessness rose within him. If it weren't for the fact that they were old friends, he would have kicked him in the head, cracked it open, and poured a ball of cold water into his head to wake him up. And now, the great war between humans and demons is imminent. As the highest leaders of the 3 great palace lords, they must personally participate in the war. Going back to tens of thousands of years ago, when the Great War was approaching, the 3 great heavenly palaces had to take over the reins of power. Because the 3 palace lords' fate is uncertain this time, the danger is unpredictable, and there's no guarantee that they can escape unscathed. However, the foundations of the 3 palaces cannot be destroyed. Therefore, when the palace lords participate in the battle, it's the time when the new palace lord takes office. If the palace lord dies in the battle, the new palace lord will conveniently take over the palace. If the palace lord returns safely, the new palace lord will take a step back and become a vice palace lord, still the palace lord's successor. However, under normal circumstances, any palace lord who has participated in the battle will not linger on the position even if he returns safely. Almost all of them will step down directly and choose to live the life they want. Therefore, from the day the new palace lord takes over as the substitute palace lord, he is already the real palace lord of the heavenly palace. And now, there are 4 saints in each of the 3 palaces. Although the supreme heavenly pavilion selection is imminent, if someone is selected, even if the other 3 are verbally convinced, they may not be convinced in their hearts. And at this time, the 3 palaces will have to carry out an internal cleansing, or in other words, to pave the way for the new palace lord. Brother Lu said coldly, and you and I, including all the people who came out with the saints, are the targets of the cleansing. Targets of cleansing? How did we become targets of cleansing? I didn't do anything out of line, did I? What are you doing? What else do you want? Now, you're even helping the saint to attack the Xianhuang hero. Isn't that enough? I think I understand more or less. I'm now a henchman of the saint. If he doesn't get better, I'll also be finished with him. That's more or less what I mean. Speaking of which, the saints originally had a period of peace. At least, if they really wanted to develop into an internal strife, they would have to wait until the great battle begins. Only then, when the palace lords are busy with the demon race, will the saints fight it out with each other. The winner takes all. Because before that, the saints don't dare to act rashly. Only when the three palace lords are occupied would the holy sons dare to attack each other. And when they really go to that period, it's often the time when a new palace lord is born. The three palace lords are definitely not happy to see such a situation happen, but the emergence of a new palace lord is inevitable. The winner takes all. Only the survival of the fittest can maximize the power of the palace lord successor. The new palace lord must have considerable means and tactics, which is why undercurrents are inevitable when the palace lord is replaced. And now, all the conflicts have surfaced because of the emergence of a huge variable. Based on Yun Yang's contributions to the human race, even if he gets the position of Xuanhuang's supreme cloud, it's understandable. But the crux of the problem is that he's suddenly promoted to the top of the Xianhuang continent's younger generation. Yun Yang, who has gone to this position, is bound to replace the position of any palace lord as long as the selection begins in Supreme Heaven Pavilion. And this result is not what any saint would like to see. It's because of this that the conflict that originally only existed among the saints has been intensified in advance, and the spearhead is all pointed at Yun Yang. Every sky palace has 4 holy sons. Ever since the holy sons were determined to be holy sons, every holy son has gathered a group of personal supporters, just like you and me. And every time there's a change of power, there must be a large number of people who will be purged. If our masters are defeated in this battle, then you and I will be the ones who will be purged. In this process of purging, everyone is equal. Anyone can be purged, but anyone can also have a meteoric rise, hold power, and be at the top for tens of thousands of years. What the saints pursue is power, to ascend to the throne of the pinnacle. As for the position of the saints, it has nothing to do with power. It's more about the direction of authority. Then, in the true sense of the word, who holds the power? It's in the hands of their followers. Do you know why the lords of the 3 heavenly palaces can be so righteous and open? It's because after they ascend to the position of the lords, they don't need to resort to underhanded tricks anymore. Everything can be solved in a righteous and honorable way. After tens of thousands of years of accumulation, it's a very difficult thing to not be righteous. When Brother Lu spoke of these things, his expression was cold and his tone was even colder, as if he was talking about someone else. Do you know where the masters of those families that have been passed down for tens of thousands of years or even tens of thousands of years come from? They all have one or a few true rulers of the 3 heavenly palaces above them. Do you understand now? This is the real purpose of this incident. Although the saints have their own plans, their followers have their own plans as well. In the end, it's all in one sentence: once you've boarded the boat, you can't get off. Since you've already chosen a side, you have to continue to the end. You can't give up. Giving up is equivalent to suicide. This time, the action against Yun Yang is equivalent to a pre-selection rehearsal. Victory and defeat will be decided this time. Once the outcome is clear, the possibility of an unforeseen event in the future will be very small. I think the 3 palace lords are happy to see the current change. With the intervention of an external force like Supreme Cloud, the 3 heavenly palaces will be able to retain more of their forces. However, it also means that this operation will continue. The person beside him was confused by what he was hearing. His face was filled with confusion, as if he understood what Zhang Xian was trying to say. I still don't understand. Are these your guesses or is it true? Why do I feel that it's more and more unfathomable the more I listen? Sigh. Brother Lu. On one hand, Brother Lu was speechlessly frustrated and exasperated at Yun Yang's failure to live up to his expectations. On the other hand, he was bored during the process of pursuing Yun Yang. After all, he could face the pressure of life and death at any time in the future. He could use this opportunity to vent his frustrations. He explained patiently, "What I'm saying isn't speculation. Think about it carefully. If the loser dies in Yun Yang's hands this time, there won't be any direct enmity with the supporters of the other saints. In this case, although these people are fated to not be placed in an important position by the successor saints due to their standpoint and power, they won't be oppressed or targeted. At least, their identity as pinnacle cultivators will still be of great value. If it's not necessary, the successor palace lords won't cut off their own combat power. Isn't that right?" Brother Lu, who had been asking questions, still did not quite understand. "But, what does this have to do with Supreme Cloud? The more I listen, the more I feel that Supreme Cloud is actually being wronged. It's an undeserved calamity that befalls him out of the blue." Brother Lu snorted and said, "Everything in this world has its pros and cons. There's no such thing as having no pros and no cons. There's no such thing as a good opportunity when it comes to danger. Supreme Cloud has encountered an inexplicable calamity, but there are still benefits to be gained. Firstly, he's being hunted down by so many people. If he doesn't die, he'll definitely become a prominent figure in this world. Secondly, the East Celestial Palace has spent so many resources on him back then. It's already a form of compensation. Thirdly, I guess the masters of the 3 celestial palaces must have made another promise to Yun Yang. These 3 points alone are already great benefits for Supreme Cloud. Not to mention, there's also his identity as the Bound of Universe's hero, the continent's unrivaled expert. Isn't that enough? Innocent? How is he innocent? With great power comes great responsibility. It's never an empty saying. However, if Supreme Cloud really dies in the hands of our successor saints this time, what will happen? What will happen? What else can we say? Whoever killed Supreme Cloud would have a celestial palace in their hands. As for the title, who can prove that Supreme Cloud died in the hands of that person? Supreme Cloud is obviously the target that the masters of the celestial palaces have pushed out. What does such a person represent? It represents ability. Being able to kill him is even more proof of one's ability. Who else can we give the position of palace master to if not him? Don't treat this as a battle to ambush the continent's hero. That will have a huge negative impact on your state of mind. Just treat it as a battle of elimination. The so-called Bound of Universe's hero is a new legend. Once he dies, he's still impermanent. Isn't this the end of the legend? Yun Yang has already ascended to the position of Supreme Cloud. Falling suddenly when he's at the pinnacle of this world isn't necessarily a stroke of luck. Brother Lu smiled faintly. Of course, this battle of elimination may also be a battle of ascension for Supreme Cloud. No matter who wins or loses in the end, there are benefits to be had. It's precisely because the successor saints understand this that they're so fearless. The so-called gathering, the masks, the real and the fake, the battle, and so on are all just smokescreens for the world to see. He chuckled coldly. There's no reason in this world. Everything depends on whose fist is bigger. Brother Lu said, "Do you think Supreme Cloud himself knows the cause and effect of all these things? If Supreme Cloud doesn't know, or is unwilling to cooperate, who knows where he'd be long gone by now? Why would he still linger here to attract our attention? What he's doing now is openly baiting us to kill him." Brother Lu sneered, "Brother Lu, if you can survive in the future, why don't you go directly to your Northern Wasteland Demon Palace's war hall and become a hall master? Just focus on fighting, don't worry about anything else, just be a blade. With your brain, you're really not suited to participate in this kind of inheritance war." He rolled his eyes and said, You're full of suspicions about this fight for the throne. What makes me even more curious is that with a brain like yours, How did you get involved in the Battle of Successor Saints? This is a highly intelligent speculation. How is it something you can play in? Brother Lu's face grew redder as he growled in a low voice, "Shut up. Am I that bad?" He sped up and left. In his heart, however, he was thinking, it's so king complicated. When that bastardy old third came looking for me back then, I shouldn't have agreed to it without thinking. Now, it looks like this isn't something an honest person like me can play with. Brother Lu thought about it along the way. The more he thought about it, the more confused he became. After so many years, he had actually been used as a tool by others. He then thought about how he had to be lectured along the way when he came to kill a continental hero. Also, what did it mean to not treat him as a continental hero? What should he treat him as? The more he thought about it, the more he felt that his brain wasn't working well enough. But he was clearly the hero of the entire bound of universe. Such an unparalleled hero rarely appeared in the world even in billions of years. He had escaped from the demon race by a hair's breadth. Was he going to die by his own saber in the end? If his saber was really stained with the blood of this hero, how could his conscience be at peace for the rest of his life? Even if he held great power in another dynasty and ruled over the bound of universe, but Brother Lu's mind kept spinning, and he became more and more perplexed. All these twists and turns, so many goals, so many schemes. Although this old man has always prided himself on my cultivation base that has reached the pinnacle of this world, when it comes to the craftiness of the human heart, who can I scheme against? Brother Lu is right. With a brain like mine, should go into battle and focus on improving my cultivation. I shouldn't waste my time and effort on schemes. Even if I win in the schemes of others, with my brain, it's hard for me to get anything good. Even if I do get something good, it's hard for me to put it to good use. No wonder my dead wife always said I was stupid when she was alive. At that time, I argued every day, saying that I wasn't stupid and that I was very smart. How could a stupid person reach the pinnacle of cultivation base? Now that I think about it, my dead wife was right. Finding her as my wife was the only thing that enlightened me in this life. Since she died, this old man has never made any decisions for himself in this half of his life. I've always been at the mercy of others. That damned old hag. Why did you die so early? Why didn't you wait for me to be reincarnated? As he thought about it, he recalled the days he had spent with his deceased wife. Brother Lu's eyes grew misty. As they sped along, a huge mountain suddenly appeared in front of them. This huge mountain was completely different from the mountains they had seen before. As far as the eye could see, it looked like a barren mountain, barren without any greenery. However, upon closer inspection, one would notice that this mountain was faintly emitting a rainbow glow. The hidden elegance was like a celestial mountain that had suddenly fallen to the mortal world, filled with beautiful, fantastical colors. As their vision fell on this strange mountain, the expressions of the other two people besides Brother Lu changed. What's going on? It turned out that there was no such mountain here. Then where did this mountain in front of them come from? Could it really have fallen from the sky? The two of them couldn't help but wonder. No matter what, the sudden appearance of a mountain here was a huge miracle. There had to be something strange about it. The two of them hesitated for a moment and slowed down at the same time. Brother Lu, on the other hand, was still immersed in his own conflicting thoughts. If I really meet that hero of the continent, should I kill him or not? What happens after I kill him? What if I don't kill him? Along the way, his mind was muddled, his thoughts less than 1,000th of his usual level. Naturally, he did not notice the anomaly in front of him, nor did he realize that his two companions had stopped. He continued to fly forward with his head lowered. Yin Yang flew 7,000 miles, the dazzling saber light hanging in the air like a rainbow for a long time. It was a spectacular sight to behold. At the end of the saber light was a mountain of various strange metals that was tens of thousands of feet tall. This mountain that seemed to have appeared out of thin air was created by Yun Yang himself. At this moment, he was standing on the peak of this mountain, looking at the three silhouettes that were speeding towards him like meteors. 3 people. With 2 sabers and 1 sword, the 3 Saint Monarchs came together in a triangular formation. Yin Yang unsheathed his saber, his gaze cold and sharp without the slightest hint of fear. Seeing the approaching people, he sucked in a deep breath, prepared to deal a fatal blow with his first strike. As he breathed in deeply, the abundant mystical qi accumulated in his body surged like the waves of the sea, surging up from his dantian. The divine edge in his hand trembled and hummed as it was infused with mystical qi. It was unusually pleasant to the ears, as if it was yearning for the start of the battle. Then, Yin Yang's eyes narrowed. Out of the 3 people who were chasing after them, 2 of them had stopped for some reason, while the other person maintained his original speed and rushed over like a rocket. The person was getting closer and closer. Yin Yang, who was about to deliver the killing blow, was shocked to find that the fellow's face was filled with confusion. It was as if he was in a dream, as if he was sleepwalking in the world. Yin Yang could not help but be puzzled by the scene. What was this phenomenon? What kind of explanation was this? The other party's malicious thoughts had long been planted in Yin Yang's heart. Watching the other approach, Yin Yang stood still, the saber in his hand raised slightly, ready to strike. In the blink of an eye, the person was already close to Yin Yang. The moment the cultivator's self-defense instinct was awakened, he realized that Yin Yang was already within reach, staring at him with an icy gaze. The saber in his hand was even ready to strike. Brother Lu's reaction was still unusual as he suddenly cried out, "How can he be so fast?" He actually did a somersault, and then his feet moved repeatedly, and he rose several tens of feet in the air. His body turned quickly, and the saber that was condensed with all of his Xian Qi spun around his body at lightning speed, and then he put the saber back into the sheath. Yin Yang's long-awaited strike was about to be unleashed, taking down one of the enemies according to his plan and ensuring that the initiative of the battle was in his hands. However, he was shocked to see the newcomer's expression as if he had seen a ghost. Yin Yang was also impressed by the other party's exquisite movement and reflexes, which was the best he had ever encountered. Then, he was puzzled as to why the other party had kept his saber away after he had shaken off Yin Yang's attack. Was he not afraid that Yin Yang would pursue him and kill him? Even with Yin Yang's brain, he could not help but feel bewildered. What was he trying to do? You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.